Chapter 1876–1900 Supremacy Games. Chapter 1876 I leave it to you. Before he could finish his curse, Felix noticed the genuine shock and perplexity in Ares' eyes, making him realize that he had nothing to do with this. Our reign is near its end. Suddenly, a Monare familiar merciless voice resounded in the area from the depth of Ares' soul. Out of nowhere, his majestic divine eagle-shaped face manifested in front of Felix. His eyes were as cold as a frozen lake. Ares and Felix were left startled for a brief moment before their expressions turned murderous. Amonare! What have you done to me? Ares uttered with a vicious look. He could feel that both his soul and core were in the process of self-implosion. A process he hadn't initiated at all. The worst part? He tried to cancel it but to no avail. You are a fool if you thought we would let you face the Paragon with your core at risk of being stolen, Amonare sneered coldly. We provided you with everything needed to defeat him, and yet you made the idiotic decision not to use them. Useless trash like you belongs in the dumpster. Now perish. The core in Ares' soul began to glow with a dangerous intensity, threatening to unleash a cataclysmic explosion. Felix's pupils thinned out as he sensed the impending disaster, knowing that he couldn't let Ares' core be destroyed like this. All of his endeavors would be thrown down the drain. To make matters worse, Ares' core would be reborn by the universe's heart just like Demeter's core. In other words, the three rulers would own 5 cores, making it more difficult to obtain them. I can't let this happen. Felix narrowed his gaze coldly as he summoned his celestial black flames. Then, he channeled them into the core, enveloping it in a cocoon of intense flames. The flames were absorbing none other than Amonare's divine presence on the core. Felix knew that it would be nearly impossible to stop a Unigen's core from self-explosion when it was being affected by celestial powers. After all, he couldn't even abuse his laws in a make-wish when the core was being protected by Amonare's divinity. Paragon. Ares slitted his eyes. I will assist you. He already knew that his life was pretty much done for as he couldn't stop his soul implosion, and even if he succeeded, his core's destruction would spell the end of him. Hence, he was left with only one choice, and that was to direct his will and energy to stabilize the core from within. Meanwhile, Amonare merely smirked with malicious glee. You think you can control it? How foolish! He intensified his endeavors to accelerate the core's implosion, causing the sphere's glow to grow more violent. Felix gritted his teeth, feeling the strain as he pushed more of his celestial black flames into the core. He held absolutely nothing back, causing the two forces to mix around each other, and creating a mesmerizing scene. As the intensity of their power grew, each tried to outmatch the other. Ares realized that his core was going to implode against their endeavors. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. He switched his gaze to Felix and gave him a slight head nod, a faint smile painted across his determined visage. I leave it to you. Without saying anything, Ares closed his eyes and accelerated the explosion of his soul instead of fighting it. Ares. Felix was stunned at first, but swiftly, he figured out what Ares tried to achieve by actively extinguishing his soul. He hardened his expression and watched with unblinking gaze as Ares' soul exploded like a star, a cataclysmic supernova with the intensity of a billion suns. Felix extended his palm and used the devouring abyss of his gluttony embodiment, wanting to feast on all of the released energy. He is seeking to transform this energy into celestial black flames. Ares remarked, causing the tenants to cover their widened mouths in shock. They couldn't see a single thing amidst the heart of the explosion, but they were able to spot a massive whirlpool of energy getting sucked into Felix's massive devouring abyss. After the energy was consumed, it straight away went through the process of deconstruction and came from the other palm as a new dose of celestial black flames. This helped Felix increase the intensity and quantity of celestial black flames in his struggle, unlike Amonare. Amonare had it even worse as he didn't expect Ares to accelerate his soul explosion, causing him to get erased with him. After all, he had merged part of his soul with Ares' soul, not his core. Damn it! They have caught on quicker than expected. Amonare cursed hatefully while watching the spectacle of Felix fighting against his remaining divinity. He was no longer in contact with the divinity, which meant he couldn't increase its strength. If it was up to him, he wouldn't have bothered to explode Ares' soul, knowing that he would be removed from it. But, he knew that as much as his little merged wisp had control over Ares' decision, it couldn't stop him if he wanted to blow his soul or core. He could decide for Ares, but not resist the decision. Arg! Meanwhile, Felix grunted in difficulty while his entire body was illuminated by the Stone of Reality's inscriptions, giving it their all to deconstruct the insane amount of energy. You can do it, Felix. Keep pushing, you've got this. The tenants kept cheering on Felix with looks of concern, knowing that it would suck terribly to lose Ares' core in such a fashion. Fortunately, Ares' sacrificial decision came at the perfect time. Amonare's divinity tried its absolute best to resist the black flame's intense devouring power, but to no avail. Without a host to keep it fed, it ended up getting fully consumed, leaving Ares' core surrounded by a massive cocoon of celestial black flames. Felix immediately reached out with his hand and caught it. Then, he wished in his mind for the universe to halt the self-explosion. Without a symbol manifesting in the open, the wish was granted almost instantaneously after a faint glow of green light bathed the core. The radiant intense light started to slowly fade away bit by bit until the core returned to its normal appearance. Felix tightened his grip on it and stopped the deconstruction process, knowing that he could always absorb this energy later on. There was nowhere for it to go in the great nothingness. Instead, he lifted his head and gazed above into the pitch darkness. His gaze were dark and devoid of warmth, pierced through the vast expanse of the great nothingness to fixate on the distant forms of the three rulers. For others, there was nothing at the other end. But, for Felix, he seemed to be truly staring at them. This was all he did, staring at them as the black flames dancing around him kept flickering ominously, reflecting the icy ferocity in his eyes. Then, with a tone that echoed like the final toll of a death knell, he spoke a promise that sent shivers through the void: enjoy your fleeting reign while you can. I am coming for you next, and there will be no one to save you. No one. Chapter 1877. Having suspicion. Not expecting a response, Felix lowered his head and glanced at the released wild energies across the great nothingness. The battle might have ended, but the shockwaves and ripples released were still traveling at a great speed in every single direction. If left alone, they would reach the nearest galaxies. Though, they would take quite a long time. If it was just Pride Persona at the leadership, he wouldn't have given a crap about this. But, after Felix ascended to a celestial, his control over his emotions was at its perfection even when he was separated from his celestial form. That's why he was capable of keeping all personas in line and not letting them take over, like what happened in his first attempt. It was like he mastered the true embodiment state through a cheat code, unlike Ares, who was the only one considered to have truly mastered it. With a wave of his hand, he channeled his remaining power to clean the battlefield, absorbing and neutralizing the residual shockwaves and destructive forces. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, Eris and Apollo joined him, emerging from a chaotic portal. Now, that's what I call a battle. Apollo laughed while pulling out his divine lyre. I have already created the perfect score for it. Good work. Eris nodded with a solemn tone. I am sure this was one of your hardest confrontations. It was all right. Felix replied calmly as he turned away from the site of his victory, leaving behind him a breathtaking canvas of colorful nebulas in the vast emptiness. Let's head out, we have plenty of topics to discuss, Felix said while exiting the embodiment state, returning his appearance to normal. Then, he split out a clone and left the main body in the Void Realm to continue with farming celestial energy. As they left towards Cronus, continuing on their journey, they were discussing everything that occurred in the battle within his consciousness space. After all, many new and dangerous cards were revealed by the three rulers. When they were long gone, scouts from the SG Alliance patrolled the Great Nothingness, their sensors picking up unusual energy readings. As they approached the coordinates, they were met with an astonishing sight. The once empty void was now filled with a dazzling array of colorful gases, stretching across half the great void. What in the seven skies? Speechless, the scouts transmitted the images and data back to the Scallions' council. I've never seen anything like it. This is extraordinary. Emperor Local murmured in a daze. Such beauty, yet born from such destruction. Empress Scarlet remarked with a gentle tone, I don't dare to imagine how the battle between those two deities ended. Indeed, the power needed to create this, it's beyond anything we've ever encountered. Elder Dragon White commentated, his eyes gleaming with great desire and reverence. As a dragon, he worshipped strength more than anything. To see with his own eyes the aftermath of two godly beings didn't just widen his perspective, but blew it out of proportion. We truly need to investigate and find out more about them. Emperor Local said with a solemn tone. While the majority nodded in agreement, Olivia remained gazing at the mesmerizing canvas in silence. I hope you are doing well, Felix. She wished to herself, seemingly convinced that Felix had a part in this. Unlike the rest of the rulers, she knew about Felix's mission to hunt down the three rulers in the Eternal Kingdom to save Asna. So, while she couldn't fathom what happened in the Great Nothingness, she was certain that only Felix was capable of causing such trouble. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Now that she witnessed the scale of what Felix had to deal with, she realized at last that he had made the smart decision of leaving them behind. Soon, she changed her expression and joined the discussion, understanding that Felix's matters were no longer in her reach or perspective. It was best to focus on what she could do, and at this point, it was carrying from what Felix had built and helping the human race reach new horizons. Meanwhile, Felix and the tenants were still talking about the battle, mostly about the specialized divinities and the witchcraft done to Ares' soul. Specialized divinities, can I also learn them? Felix knitted his eyebrows. They must be related to celestials and not exclusive to the three rulers. Ares nodded, it should be possible to create new specialized divinities based on your laws. The three rulers were already dominating everyone by just being masters of all elements, and now, with their ability to make divine abilities, their strength ceiling has risen much higher. I believe you shouldn't make a move against them until you master those so-called specialized divinities. Apollo warned while tuning in his lyre, preparing to play his new score to the tenants. The tenants nodded in agreement. They understood that Felix's current use of his celestial powers was too limited. He was relying heavily on the inner effects of the black/white celestial flames instead of tapping into their true potential. The three rulers had been around for far too long, they clearly had already reached the peak potential of using celestial energy. Ares has shown us a mere taste of them. Thor frowned, they were already too powerful, I can't imagine their true strength while wielded by the three rulers. Specialized divinities. Felix glanced at Lilith, who was chilling in peace near the pool, not bothering anyone. He had a feeling that she might have an idea about them even though the three rulers had done their best to keep them hidden. After all, it was quite impressive to hide something from Ares. He wanted to ask her, but at the same time, he preferred keeping his distance from her as the day of her execution was getting closer and closer. Asna's soul was near completion with 97% already covered. Based on the incredible duration it took, the last 3% would take some while too. But still, there wasn't much time left and he would rather not entertain Lilith before then. However, it seemed like Lilith had a different story. After picking up on his gaze, she lowered her sunglasses and bestowed him a faint seductive smile. Then, she shared, I don't know much about specialized divinities, but I do know that the three rulers can do wicked things using them. I won't be surprised if what they did to Ares' soul was related to a specialized divinity. She added with a short yawn. The tenants were left staring at each other in silence and deep frowns. Each of them realized that if the three rulers could affect Ares' soul to such a degree with a mere divinity, then, God knew what else they were hiding from them. Hold on a second. Felix suddenly tilted his head in deep thought. If the three rulers can modify and mess with Ares' soul to give them some control over him, then can't they? His gaze swiftly crossed past everyone as he switched his focus back to his celestial form and then immediately entered Asna's core. Lilith was still the solely resident in it, lying lazily on her magnificent throne. Felix ignored her existence and used every possible scanning ability at his disposal to inspect Asna's soul and core. But, just like the first time, he found nothing wrong with them. Both the core and Asna's soul seemed as pure as ever without anyone's interference. This should have been enough before to pacify Felix's heart, but after realizing that Ares failed to pick up on Amonare's presence in his soul while he was alive, he understood that it might not be so simple. While I was delighted that my plan worked and Asna's soul exploded, I always had some misgivings. Felix narrowed his eyes as he kept scanning every inch of his beloved's heart/soul. How can the three rulers, with all their experiences and intelligence, not do anything and watch as Asna's soul explodes right under their eyes? Oh ho ho! Didn't it work because you made sure the explosion occurred faster than the rulers could react? Lilith played along with a faint smile. That's what I wished, that's what I hoped for, but deep down, I know this isn't a fairy tale. Felix stated coldly, it is never that easy, especially when dealing with ancient gods. Ah, if you say so. Lilith turned around and bestowed him a jovial lazy look, then, what do you think they did? I don't know, but I am sure it is related to specialized divinities. Felix sat cross-legged and stated coldly, I am not leaving here until I find something. Chapter 1878. The gears started to turn. If scanning abilities and normal celestial flames can't pick up on anything, then specialized divinities must be the answer, Felix said with a thoughtful expression. Knowing there was only one method to learn them, Felix didn't hesitate to make a wish from the universe to show him the way. The universe accepted the payment in celestial energy and fed Felix with all the required information to create his specialized divinities. Interesting, the creation process is split into 4 steps: define the divinity's core, infusion of celestial energy and will, channeling and merging of laws/elements, and lastly, finalization and sealing with intent. Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. It sure takes a great deal of effort to create them. Mind clarifying each step? Eris and Lady Sphinx requested simultaneously while sharpening their intent. I will do you one better. Felix switched his focus to his main celestial form in the void and prepared to demonstrate the creation of his first specialized divinity. The first step is to define the core of the divinity. In this case, I'm choosing lightning as the foundation, aligning it with the purpose of swift and devastating strikes. He extended his hand forward with his palm facing upward. Then, he manifested a small orb out of electricity. Next, I infuse the core with a blend of my celestial energy and a fragment of my will, Felix continued while channeling his energy into the orb, causing the lightning to grow fiercer. Now, I channel and unite additional laws to enhance the divinity's capabilities if I desire. He clarified, I can still create a divinity using just one law, but if more laws were merged, the end product would be much more unique and potent. I see, what law will you choose? Eris asked. Let's go with antimatter. I am aiming to create a divinity that can strike with great destruction but at the speed of lightning. The tenants watched as the two chosen forces merged and combined inside the core. After the process was concluded, Felix concluded, last but not least, I seal the divinity with a promise of intent, binding it to my will. Felix closed his hand, and the orb vanished, absorbed back into his being. Now, I have prepared specialized divinity that can come to life the instant I pour celestial energy in its core. Ah, it's like preparing an ability beforehand, Thor remarked. Yes. Felix nodded. But, that's it. Candace tilted her head in confusion. She expected the process to be much more complicated to master. Yet, Felix seemed to be natural at this. It is complicated, but I am a celestial too. Felix smiled faintly, there isn't anything that's too difficult for me to learn. The tenants couldn't help but chuckle, realizing that he was right. At his current level, everything came naturally to him. Still, it will take a little while to master instant creation. He added while extending a finger into the dark void. Then, a brilliant milky white ray of electricity and antimatter was released into the distance. If he wasn't already in a dimension voided out of matter, the ray would have pierced through the space-time like a piece of cloth. For now, let's focus on what's needed. Felix narrowed his eyes as he started thinking of creating a detection-based specialized divinity. He had already used a wish before to check if the three rulers had messed up with Isna's soul or not. But, the result came back negative. Now, that specialized divinities were involved, he knew that his greed laws might not have worked on them if the three rulers had them immune to laws. After all, only celestial powers could deal with celestial matters. While Felix's celestial form was working on creating the best detection specialized divinity, the three rulers were having their discussion on this exact subject. We have revealed our specialized divinity's inability to manipulate with a Unigen's soul during its recovery. Medusa uttered with a solemn tone, "This isn't good, the boy is now a celestial. I am certain he will make a connection sooner or later. That's the risk we had to take." The first ruler uttered calmly, seemingly unaffected. "The moment we geared Ares with specialized divinities, this was bound to happen whether he won or lost. If only he won and got us the cores." Amonare sneered, "The brat would have been weakened immensely and we fasten our plan to break apart the universe's heart." Unlike them, Felix's connection to laws was based on his cores. Thus, if he lost that many cores at once, it would be the same as slicing off the wings of an eagle. Sure, he would still have his celestial flames, but would they be enough to deal with the three rulers and their ability to tap into all elements in the universe? There is less than 3% before Isna's soul recovers. Medusa squinted, "I suggest we hasten the process. I am certain I can make her soul reach 100% in an instant." "Do it, obtaining her core will end this whole farce at once," Amonare uttered coldly, "let's see if he will dare reject our orders then." n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Having Isna's soul was one thing, but possessing her core was another. They knew that Felix could strengthen his mind if they bothered to torture her soul, but he wouldn't ignore them if he realized that they planned to use her core to blow the universe's heart. They knew that the moment he stepped into the Eternal Kingdom, it would be the end of him. Medusa glanced at the first ruler, who stayed silent, awaiting his approval too. His divine eyes were affixed on the universe's heart, that tiny single white dot. She wasn't too worried about wasting their time as they had manipulated the time in the dimension to flow according to the void Felix was hiding in. After such a massive time difference, a mere second was enough for an entire civilization to be born and die in the quantum realm. After a short while, the first ruler retracted his gaze and gave Medusa a head nod. It's time indeed. For all their knowledge and emotional restraint, the three rulers still felt a tingle of unease about the failure of their plan. They had followed the exact instructions of the tablet and while it seemed vague most of the time, they still carried those instructions to heart. Now, they were finally at the last lap, with only one hurdle in front of them. They weren't worried about the hurdle stopping them, but by their success coming back with nothing. After billions of years of preparation and hard work, if they still couldn't reach the other side, not even they could handle such a setback. As the gears were set in motion, Felix, Eris, and Apollo were seen entering the same deserted galaxy, where Felix had found Isna's core in the ruins. Of course, the galaxy might be the same, but the happenings were in a different timeline. In simpler terms, there might be the existence of the planet, but there was no Isna in it or the sealing hall. Thus, Felix merely paid a short visit to the ruins and as expected, he found that Isna's imprisonment ground was nothing but an empty piece of land. Still, Felix couldn't help but reminisce as he picked up a handful of dirt. Scenes of his bloodline clan's spaceship landing on this exact planet, searching for any treasures within the ancient city's ruins, reflected in his mind. To think my new life started right here, but in a different timeline is just too ludicrous to envision. Felix smiled wryly while dusting his palms. The concept of frozen timelines is too complex even for us. Eris uttered calmly, the only one with a full understanding of it is Cronus. Cronus, hey, there are so many questions I want to ask him. Felix gazed at the distant stars, I hope he won't turn us back. I do too. Without delay, the three Unigens went through a chaotic portal, and when they reappeared, they found themselves right in front of the galaxy's supermassive black hole. This was the last known place of Cronus, but in a different timeline. Unlike Felix and Isna, he was still residing in the old main timeline that had become frozen now. In other words, they had to jump across timelines to reach him. Chapter 1879. Sometimes, ignorance is bliss. Though, there was quite a big issue. No one could enter the other timelines without Cronus' approval. Just like Felix's domain was the Void Realm and Hades' domain was the Spirit Realm, Cronus ruled over the infinite frozen timelines, and not even the three rulers could gain access to them. Now what? Apollo asked while looking around him, do we just wait here, or are you going to use a wish or something? Let's wait. If Cronus wants to meet us, he will allow us in, if no. Before Felix could finish his sentence, all three felt a sudden ripple of energy pulse from within the black hole. They glanced at each other for a moment, realizing that this was an unmistakable sign for them to enter the black hole. Well, it's best not to leave him waiting. Felix expanded his anti-gravity barrier on his partners and then took the lead, plunging himself into the devouring darkness of the black hole. Apollo and Eris swiftly followed along. While they were wearing anti-gravitational barriers, their journey was still not smooth. Time seemed to stretch and compress around them, warping their perception of reality, and making them feel as if they were being torn apart and reassembled in an infinite loop. Then, suddenly, they were through. The disorienting sensation stopped, and Felix, Apollo, and Eris found themselves emerging from another black hole. The moment they adjusted to the new environment, they were met with a disturbing sensation. The universe around them was strangely familiar, yet clearly different. The stars were the same, the black hole still loomed behind them, but the very fabric of reality felt wrong. Everything is really frozen in time, how peculiar, Apollo murmured in a daze as he drifted away from the event horizon. It's quite mysterious and eerie, Felix said, his senses spread across the entire galaxy, making him glimpse at the frozen stars, hung planets motionless in their orbits, and the cosmic debris suspended mid-collision. Yet, the freakiest sight was still the scene of life forms static in all sorts of positions and forms. His previous clanmates were one of them. Felix couldn't help but feel weirded out as he stared at his Bloodlines clan spaceship hovering above the ruined city while tens of his clanmates were frozen during their search. When he zoomed closer and went under the city, his eyes reflected the golden amber gate and the little hole in the ground. He kept zooming in until he saw the soul explosion retracting across the entire ceiling hall. Cronus must have saved us right above now, Felix murmured to himself. You are correct. Suddenly, Cronus' deep voice resounded behind them, forcing them to turn around and gaze at his massive, thin eye. It was centered on the black hole, making it resemble the eye of the galaxy. Brother Chrono! Long time no see! Apollo immediately gave out a loud comfortable laugh, like he was long-term buddies with Cronus. Cronus, how are you doing? Eris greeted politely. Same old, Cronus replied calmly and then turned his eye to Felix, who would have thought that little human I rescued with Isna will make it this far in life. You. Felix's eyelids twitched, you are the only one who knows. Me. Cronus chuckled, you will be surprised by the few things I knew in life. Isna already told me. Felix frowned, do you really erase your memories? Why so? Are you that desperate to run from the future? I don't know, I don't recall why I am avoiding seeing the future. Cronus replied, his voice calm, but there was a tint of grief in his voice, but, I know this, the truth is damaging enough it will shatter your reality. Eris, Apollo, and Felix glanced at each other with solemn and curious expressions. To see an upper Unigen react this extreme over a piece of information could only mean that the truth wasn't for everyone to handle. Still, Felix had to make sure it didn't reflect what he already knew. Does it have a relation to me being the reincarnation of the universe's consciousness and how I was using the tablet to facilitate my rebirth? He asked. Although Felix wasn't certain about the last part, he still added it, thinking that Cronus might confirm it for them. Unfortunately, Cronus merely shook his thin pupil and said, "As I told you, I remember nothing and I don't want to." "Then, how about this?" Felix suggested, "Let me borrow your core. I will see for myself and you can still maintain your temporal/spatial powers. When I am thorough with the three rulers, I will return your core back." "How bold, asking me for my core in the first minute of our meeting." Cronus chuckled, "But, I like it this way, no need to beat around the bush. You might have removed your memories, but I know that you still peek into the near future." Felix said calmly, "Might as well come clean from the get-go." In other words, Cronus could be said to already know everything that was about to happen in this meeting from A to Z. So, he might as well save everyone's time and get straight to the point. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Unfortunately, as much as Cronus loved his straightforwardness, it didn't mean he was going to agree. "My apologies, little celestial, but I can't hand you my core, at least not now." Cronus rejected calmly. "I am just borrowing, you have my war. I don't care if it's giving or borrowing, this isn't the time." Cronus interrupted with a stern voice, making Felix realize that he had no plans of changing his decision. This bothered him quite a bit, but he kept his cool and asked politely, "May I know why?" "You will know when you reach the universe's heart," Cronus said, his thin eye reversed to show a thin bitter smile. Felix and his partners didn't cherish the smile in the slightest as it screamed ominosity. But, they knew that Cronus wasn't going to delve deeper into the subject. "You said, not now?" Felix inquired, "May I ask when will you experience comfortable handing over your core?" "It's not about comfort, my little celestial." Cronus gazed into the distance as he shared, "It's about the timing, and it's not it. When the time comes, you will find my core in your possession. By then, you will come to understand everything." "This again, why can't I just get the answers when I want?" Felix sighed in frustration. He was already a celestial and yet Cronus seemed hell-bent on keeping the truth a mystery from him. "You are already so close, I don't want to ruin your efforts." Cronus smiled painfully, "Sometimes, ignorance is bliss." "Yeah, I don't know about that." Felix wasn't convinced at all as he had spent most of his life in the dark about many subjects. He always seemed to find the truth when it was too late. "I hope you won't change your opinion later on." With those passing words, Cronus' eye faded into the black hole, leaving the trio to glance at each other in silence. "Chrono? You here?" Apollo called but to no response. "He left, how unfortunate." Eris sighed, "We didn't even get to question him about the timelines." "Let's leave." Felix turned around and went through the black hole, feeling like the trip was a waste of time. He came for Cronus' core and left with most of his questions unanswered. Although Cronus seemed to mean that his core would come under Felix's hands down in the future, Felix wasn't too pleased with it. He wanted Cronus' core as he understood it was going to help him immensely against the three rulers. Unfortunately, it didn't seem either Hades or Cronus were willing to take part in his conflict. As for resorting to violence, Felix had no interest in battling Cronus in his domain even when he understood that he was chained up to the limit. With his future foresight, it was nearly impossible to even catch him. Plus, the only reason he was chained up was because he had helped him Inisna survive death. "Thanks for helping me, Inisna." While he was upset he left empty-handed, he didn't forget to show his appreciation. He truly meant it. Without Cronus' timely interference, there wouldn't be a story to tell. After Felix and his partners exited the frozen timeline, a faint murmur echoed across the eerie silence. Will he be the first one to succeed? I sure believe so. A short pause later. Time is running thin. Chapter 1880 Battle for Asna's Soul. Meanwhile, the moment Felix exited the frozen timeline, he wasn't given even a second to analyze what was discussed with Cronus. His pupils thinned murderously after finding out an emergency had broken in Asna's core. He swiftly changed his focus to his main celestial form and gazed at Asna's core, which was abruptly engulfed in a radiant celestial light. As the light intensified, Asna's soul began to recover at an astonishing rate, far beyond anything they had ever seen. What's going on? Candace exclaimed in concern. Is this Felix's doing? No, it's the three rulers making their move. Eris narrowed her eyes. They seemed to have figured out that Felix must have found out about their plan and decided to speed up the process. This is bad. Asna's soul recovery is increasing at an insane speed. Thor frowned. It's already at 99%. Felix also knew that he was strapped for time, making him swiftly activate his newly crafted specialized detection divinity. As the detection divinity took hold, Felix's vision sharpened, focusing directly on Asna's core, and bypassing any celestial covers. What he saw next sent a chill through him. A massive green serpentine figure was coiled tightly around Asna's core, its scales shining with a divine radiance. The snake's body was impossibly large and had its long razor-sharp fangs deeply embedded into the top of Asna's core. Instead of sucking out her essence, it was injecting great quantities of refined celestial energy. The sight was nightmarish, leaving the tenants to stare at the snake with horrified looks and faces paler than paper. What the hell is that? Candace breathed, her voice trembling. Was this snake here ever since blowing Asna's soul? Loki murmured, despair creeping into his tone. The notion of this snake lurking over them for years under their noses didn't sit well with any of them. They didn't even know if the snake saw and heard everything they were discussing. Meanwhile, Felix ruthlessly suppressed his emotions, knowing that now was not the time for weakness. He instantly transported above the snake's head and placed his palms right on its scalp. With a murderous look, he fired beams of concentrated celestial black flames, going all out to incinerate it. Alas, as the beams landed on the snake's head, a skin-tight holy golden barrier formed around the snake and ate the beams for lunch. Its surface kept rippling as it absorbed the impact of Felix's attack. Although Felix was going all out and tried his utmost to deconstruct the barrier, it still put out a decent fight. Damn it, by the time it dies out, Asna's soul would have already completed. Felix's expression hardened. Even when he was using his main celestial form, he was still struggling, making him realize that the three rulers' divine abilities weren't as easy to deconstruct as the Unigens using them. This was really the worst possible time to find out. Meanwhile, the three rulers were watching this situation from their elevated platforms, knowing that Felix could never kill the snake before Asna's soul restoration was completed. I won't kill it in time. A sense of despair started to wash over Felix as his eyes kept drifting from one place to another, seemingly working out all solutions in his mind, but nothing seemed good or fast enough. Asna's soul was already at 99.60%. In other words, almost nothing he came up with would be good enough. Try all you can, her fate is decided. Medusa smiled coldly. It's been a while since we saw despair in his face, Amonare uttered, his voice laced with venomous delight. That's a look fitting him the most. Suddenly, Felix's expression turned frigid as he changed his focus from the snake to Asna's soul. If I can't kill the snake, I have no issues with ruining Asna's soul twice. The situation had escalated far beyond his initial expectations, making him realize that only such a grim decision could work, if not already too late. It was a desperate move, but Felix was prepared to do whatever it took to protect her from landing again in the three rulers' hands, anything. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Whoosh! Whoosh! The celestial black flames in his hands roared, ready to deliver one last attack. But, just as Felix was about to act, a soft, melodic voice interrupted him. Now, little cutie, Lilith's voice echoed through the core, carrying a faint yet knowing smile. She appeared beside him, her presence was graceful and composed compared to her usual lazy playfulness. No need for such a dramatic solution, allow me. Hey! Felix paused in confusion before instantly getting rid of it, realizing that Lilith might be trying to slow him down to give the snake a chance to finish her job. How could ever trust in Lilith's words after what she had done to him to gain access to Asna's core? However, this time Lilith seemed to be telling the truth. She extended her arm towards the snake and murmured softly, "Core flare cleansing." The moment the words left her mouth, a brilliant flare of light erupted from Asna's core instantly. The flare was so intense, that it engulfed the entire core in a blinding milky light, making it possible for only a few to witness the next shocking happenings. The coiling snake, its protective barrier, and any other lingering foreign presence were instantly erased with an absolute finality that left no trace behind. After the blinding light died out, only Felix and Lilith were left standing in Asna's core. "See?" Lilith said with a playful smile, "No need for such drastic measures. Sometimes, all it takes is a little finesse." Her words fell on deaf ears as no one managed to come up with a proper reaction. Whether it was Felix, the tenants, or even the three rulers. Everyone was left stunned. How could they not? What Lilith had just used was a core-based defensive ability, which could be used by just the owner. Not even Felix could use them since he wasn't considered the official owner of Asna's core. He could give it simple commands, but to use specific core-based abilities? He had to ascend with Asna's core and make it officially his own. But, he never did and was keeping it as a mere placeholder, knowing that the moment Asna's soul recovered, her core would leave and empty a slot for him. That's why he was holding off Ares' ascension. But now, his thought process and all of his plans were completely thawed by a single move from Lilith. How? In the blink of an eye, Felix gained control over his emotions and gave a deathly stare at Lilith, fearing for the worse. Lilith always told him that if he were to attack her or try to force her out of Asna's core, she was going to make him regret his decision real fast. While he always thought she might be bluffing, he refused to risk it, having a tingling feeling that a manipulative witch like her must always have a plan. Now, it became clear that she wasn't bluffing in the slightest. Chapter 1881 I have long awaited this. Hey! Before Lilith could answer him, Felix and the tenants were shocked to see her body suddenly breaking into light particles. "Looks like it's my time." "Ah, I was so close." Lilith giggled with an unbothered expression as she watched her own soul slowly disintegrate into a cloud of light. "Nov. L. B //JNN." She turned to Felix and blew him a loving kiss, then she said, "Don't forget about me, little cutie." As the last word left her mouth, her entire being faded away, akin to a string of fireflies dying as a collective, their light illuminating one last time. Felix and the rest of the tenants could only watch the now empty throne, collapsing into nothingness, marking Lilith's sudden passing. Is this real? As much as Felix tried to deny it, tried to disbelieve it, his specialized divine detection ability didn't pick on Lilith's aura anywhere. There were only two auras left behind, his own, and Asna's after soul finally completed its recovery. Before he could think too much about this unexpected twist of events, Asna's core suddenly turned as bright as daylight and started pulsing with celestial aura, akin to the awakening of a divine deity. Then, it left his body, making him switch his vision to his real eyes, gazing at her radiant core floating away in the void. Felix and the tenants watched in awe as the core turned into a milky white cocoon before releasing a massive pillar of light that pierced through the dimensions. It kept cutting through the fabric of space and time until it painted the same image of Felix's ascension in everyone's eyes. Within the pillar of light, Asna's body began to take a humanoid shape, each detail meticulously formed by the celestial energy. Felix, completely forgotten about Lilith, could only watch with a slightly opened mouth and widened eyes as his beloved woman possessed her own body at last. Her flawless fair skin emerged from the light, followed by the flowing waterfall of her crimson-red hair, resembling the deepest flames of a sunset. Her body was perfectly sculpted, with an elegant figure and curves that would turn anyone straight with a single glance. She wasn't wearing anything, but the divine light covered the majority of her silky smooth milky skin. As the light began to dim down, her other divine features came to light, starting with her eyes. Two brilliant amber orbs, glowing like miniature suns, matching greatly with her delicate plump lips. They curved into a subtle smile as her rebirth was finally completed. Felix stood speechless, his eyes locked onto Asna. She was always the most beautiful girl in the room, but looking at her in her flesh gave him an entirely different sensation. It was like he was staring into a drawn goddess that could be touched and felt in the real world. Even the tenants were captivated by the sight, unable to remove their stares away from the reborn goddess before them. Asna took a step forward, her movements were fluid and graceful as if she had never been absent. Her eyes met Felix's, and the world around them seemed to fade away for a moment. There was an understanding between them, a connection that transcended words. "Asna, my love." Felix mumbled as he stretched his hand forward, his twitching fingers speaking volumes of his emotional instability. He could control his emotions as a celestial, but not here, not now. He allowed his body to express itself akin to any other mortal. This made him feel like he was living in a dream that he had longed for so long. "Felix," Asna's voice was soft, but sent a wave of emotion over Felix, "I'm back." Those words were enough to pacify Felix's heart akin to a cool breeze washing over him in a hot summer. He stepped toward her, unable to contain the smile that spread across his face. He then got hold of her hands, intertwining their fingers for the first time ever with their real bodies. "I thought for a second that I lost you," Felix stated as he brought her into his embrace, holding her back firmly while using the other hand to gently caress her hair. Asna enjoyed his touch very much and buried her head in his chest, hugging him back as tight as possible. She longed for her freedom for so long, this moment should have been thrilled and over the moon. But now, she was happy just by reuniting with her beloved. She didn't even care if she was free or not, she just wanted to be with him. After a long-lasting beautiful embrace between two celestials, Felix pulled Asna away a little and gazed adoringly in her star-like eyes. "How I patiently craved for this moment, for this very moment," he murmured while caressing her cheek with his hand, feeling her every pore and perfection in his palm. "I was waiting for this." Asna showed a delicate smile and pulled his face towards hers slowly until their lips connected. Time slowed as their lips met, the kiss soft and tender at first, seemingly reminding them of a gentle connection that spoke of both relief and longing. But as the moment deepened, so did the kiss, growing more passionate, more intense, as if they were making up for every moment they had been apart. Asna's arms wrapped around Felix's neck, tugging him closer, while Felix's palms slid down to her waist, anchoring her against him. The world around them ceased to exist, there was only the warmth of the kiss, the shortness of their breaths, and the undeniable bond between them. Pure love is the purest form of art. Apollo smiled in fondness as he played a soft melody with his lyre, elevating this beautiful memory even higher. Felix and Asna seemed to not even hear the soft and ethereal notes drifting through the air, wrapping them like a tender embrace. As the lyre's melody filled the space, each chord resonated with the depth of their bond. A serene lullaby that underscored the softness of their kiss. It was as if the lyre itself was singing of their love, its voice a whispering breeze that carried the promise of forever. But, what made moments beautiful and unforgivable were their short finality. As the music was coming to an end, Felix and Asna opened their eyes as they slowly pulled apart their lips. They left their foreheads to rest against each other, both breathing heavily, seemingly savoring the closeness they had both craved for so long. As their loving stares met, a soft smile played on Felix's lips. "I have also waited for this." "Not as much as me," Asna smiled back, her eyes shining with love. Then, she leaned for another kiss, sealing the moment with the promise of many more to come. Chapter 1882, A Sacrifice or Ploy. After they separated for the second time, Felix's expression turned solemn. He told Isna about what just happened and how if it wasn't for Lilith, he would have been forced to blow her soul to rescue her. Then, he asked with a serious tone, "Do you feel any change within you? I refuse to believe that Lilith has sacrificed her life for your sake."
Nothing.
Isna shook her head. "If she has done something to my soul or core, I would know it."
"I see."
While he trusted Isna's words, he still refused to accept such a turn of events. He would rather trust in the universe ceasing to exist all of a sudden than accept Lilith's sacrifice. "You said she was able to use my core-based defensive abilities." Isna analyzed thoughtfully.
"Yes,
and she disappeared after using just one."
Felix inquired, "What do you think?"
"In my eyes, if she can use them, then, she is no different than being the owner of your core. This is simply impossible on so many levels. True, even you could give simple commands to my core due to your thin connection with the universe's consciousness."
Isna nodded seriously, "Yet, she seemed to have higher authority over you."
"I know, it's simply illogical."
Felix frowned. "Let's examine with a wish."
Felix went on and wished for the answer from the universe, paying whatever price was needed. The answer he received wasn't to his expectation.
"She is really gone."
His pupils enlarged in shock. He assumed that the universe would at least not answer him, believing that Lilith might have done something that not even the universe would pick up on. Alas, his suspicion came back negative. Now, he had no clue what to think. All of his senses were screaming at him that Lilith would never come this far and kill herself for Isna's sake, yet, everything pointed to her truly being gone.
"Maybe she, I don't know, I didn't interact enough with that slut to understand what goes in her mind."
Isna waved her hand carelessly, dropping the matter entirely. Although Lilith had saved her, she didn't feel an ounce of appreciation. She had heard about how she exploited her man to gain access to her core. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. She was more pissed about what she did to Felix than the fact she resided in her core for such a long time. Also, the fact she always flirted with Felix didn't help her case at all.
"Let me in, I wanna meet with Big Sis and the others."
"Ah, all right." While Isna seemed to have thrown the matter at the back of her mind and just wanted to reunite with her lover and friends, Felix just couldn't do the same. As he watched Isna hug his masters and laugh joyfully, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes at her back.
"Lilith, I understand your saga isn't going to end this anticlimactically."
He thought coldly, "I have no clue what you planned, but I am never going to let my protection down, never again." Felix wasn't the only one taken back by what Lilith had done. The three rulers were still staring into nothingness in silence, questioning their reality. They had everything planned to obtain Isna's core, anticipating every move that Felix was about to make. Even his attack on her soul wouldn't work, as they were going to protect it with their divine barrier. While it wasn't going to hold that much, it didn't matter. Isna's soul would have already been completed by then. The only thing they never expected was for Lilith to have the authority to use the core-based abilities of a core that wasn't hers.
"I don't understand."
Medusa murmured, "How can this happen? How can she do that? Is there something we are missing?"
"Lilith."
Amonare gritted his teeth. Ever since she returned from the Echoing Tower's mission, she has been acting up. It's true, she tried to steal the universe's heart for some reason even though she knew it was impossible to move it, forcing our hands to banish her. Medusa frowned. After her banishment, she created the Void Race and the Demon Race. Now this? It's like she knows something we don't.
That's exactly it.
The first ruler stated calmly, "I don't understand what kind of information she has, but all of her actions seemed geared to help the Paragon defeat us." True, without the Void Race or Demon Race, his development would have hit a wall before his ascension. Medusa nodded, but, I always thought that she was doing this for her sake, betting on him to help her reach the other side. This was what everyone had thought too, believing that Lilith would do anything to obtain her freedom, but now? No one was so sure. Now what? Amonare turned to the prophecy tablet. The tablet has guaranteed that we will obtain Asna's core. But, we failed, and worse of all, we allowed Asna to land in the Paragon's hands while he could farm a boundless amount of celestial energy from the universe. Both rulers' expressions turned solemn, understanding that if Asna were to awaken, their peaceful lives would be no more. Even if she wasn't the universe's consciousness replacement as everyone assumed, her awakening would still put her at a scary level. After all, she was allowed to roam the universe as a Unigen/Celestial, but after her awakening, she would be a true Celestial. While they didn't understand if the universe would force her to enter the Eternal Kingdom or not, they were certain she would come for them on her own. After their heinous treatment of her, she was bound to seek revenge. The prophecy tablet has changed. The first ruler frowned. Asna's core has vanished from the instructions. It did. Amonare's expression went cold as he gazed at the empty prophecy tablet. There are no further instructions. The only thing remaining was the black hole at the very top, but the rest of the instructions were all erased. Does this mean we are left to our own devices? Medusa questioned. They had been following the tablet's instructions for billions of years. It felt weird to act on something that wasn't instructed on them. Damn it, did we just waste our time on nothing? Amonare cursed. All three of them were so desperate to reach the other side, that they were willing to follow the instructions of a tablet with unknown origins. While they knew that wasn't the smartest decision, desperation called for desperate choices. Still, they did hope that the ending would be to their benefit. But now, it seemed like all of their efforts had done nothing but help one mortal climb to unimaginable heights. A climb that was so impressive, it wouldn't have been possible without such instructions. Luck might have played a huge part, but still, those instructions provided the outline. Both of you are missing the big picture. The first ruler remarked calmly, seemingly unaffected by such disappointing results. He looked at the empty tablet and shared with a knowing tone, the tablet has done exactly what we wanted from it. It gave birth to two new Celestials who will be coming at us with everything they got. If you value and desire your freedom, we are left with only one step. His voice turned frigid all of a sudden. Prepare for a war, as the final winner will have what it takes to break the universe's heart and reach the other side. Chapter 1883 A Date Across the Universe. In the first ruler's eyes, the tablet had delivered the promised result after they respected all of its instructions. While it wasn't the greatest outcome, he understood that if they managed to defeat both Asna and Felix, their celestial cores plus Felix's Unigen cores would be more than enough to brute force the universe's heart to open up. We always had doubts if Asna's core will be enough, but two celestial cores are done deal. Amonare smiled coldly. It will be enough, but Asna's awakening won't make it any easier for us. Medusa frowned. She knew that the moment Asna awakened, her spiritual consciousness would surpass theirs. In addition, she might be able to tap into the invincible laws of creation and destruction. She would be more of a hassle to deal with than Felix. The universe is a fair place. The first ruler said calmly, the moment Asna awakens, all of her powers will come at a grave price. The three rulers were also considered part of the universe's system and were under its protective rules. Just like there were many things they couldn't do without getting punished, the first rulers were certain that the universe would limit Asna's powers if she tried to abuse them. Also, we still have that. The first ruler narrowed his eyes icily, whether she awakens or not, whether they ally against us or not, their fate is sealed the moment they dare step inside the Eternal Kingdom. Medusa and Amonare understood immediately what he was talking about. Then, let's begin our preparations, Amonare uttered coldly. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. While the three rulers had kicked off their preparations for the upcoming war, knowing that only one side was going to emerge in one piece. Felix and Asna seemed to be spending their lives in ignorant bliss. He told her about everything that occurred in her absence, the ascension, the fight with Ares, his ability to deconstruct celestial energy, and more. She even met with Eris and Apollo at last. Knowing that they had saved Felix's life and were a great help for his journey, she decided to pardon them for what happened in the past. If it was for any other reason, she wouldn't have bothered to give them a single moment of her day. Of course, she didn't forget to tease Nimmo after not meeting him for God knows how much time now. Right now, both of them were supervising Apollo's mission of invading the matter universe with the dark creatures. After Felix ascended with Ares' core and obtained his laws, there was no point in waiting until Apollo created enough dark creatures. One was more than enough. Here we go, Apollo said as he released the dark army into an already prepared dimensional gap. The dark creatures swam across and emerged inside the atomic world of a plant in the process of controlled evolution. Amidst the cluttered landscape, Felix merely gazed at the dark army and his pupils started spinning clockwise. With each spin, the dark army grew bigger and bigger. In no time, the dark army emerged from within the plant, covering it entirely like a virus. As expected, Ares' laws of infinity are so much better. Apollo grinned in delight as he watched his army be welcomed to the matter universe for the first time after God knows how many attempts. While his dark alter ego wanted this the most, Apollo was still affected by his obsession to make this dream a reality. The moment the dark creatures appeared in the universe, Felix and the rest waited silently as they looked around them. A few moments later, Apollo's grin widened. "Looks like we are golden." "Good, it would have been annoying to manipulate the rules manually." Felix nodded. While Apollo's alter ego seemed certain that the universe wouldn't interfere with his dark creatures if he brought them from the quantum realm, there wasn't any concrete proof. The universe has forbidden the birth of the dark creatures, but not their transportation from one dimension to another. Thor said, "It's quite weird, to be honest. You would expect the universe to be more thorough. It's not that bizarre." Lady Sphinx shook her head. The universe limits plenty of imbalanced creatures from appearing in its main body in other realms. But, the quantum realm is a different story. It should have been impossible for any quantum native to ever step into the matter universe and cause actual damage to its structure. The dark creatures would have been the same without the many loopholes and walls needed to skip over to bring just one. When she finished, everyone's eyes were on the blob of dark matter with its two crimson eyes peering everywhere. It looked harmless and could be killed with just a touch, but every one of them knew that this creature could literally bring Armageddon to the entire universe. "Do your thing, I will visit you when you collect enough. Leave it to me." Felix gave Apollo a head nod and took off with Isna, having no interest in continuing to supervise the project. Apollo only needed to use the infinite dark matter and energy of the universe to reproduce the dark creatures. Then, choose deserted galaxies and other celestial cosmic entities for nourishment and growth. In this manner, Felix would have a decent source of farming celestial energy besides the void realm, accelerating his preparations. But for now, his head was no longer on such things. He was finally with Isna in the flesh and both of them could be said to be at the top of the universe with only 3 beings capable of halting their music. Those 3 beings couldn't access the matter universe even if they tried. In other words, this was no different than finally obtaining a part of the freedom they always desired. Felix and Isna planned on making the best of it. "Where do you want to go?" Felix inquired with a gentle smile as he held Isna's hand. "I don't care as long as it is with you." Isna smiled back. "All right then, let me assist you experience the true beauty of our universe." Felix knew that ever since Isna was born, she hadn't traveled the universe once in the flesh. She spent her childhood in the Eternal Kingdom and sealed in the imprisonment grounds. While she lived in the UVR for many years and tasted a high level of realism, it would never be as good as the real deal. Thus, he planned on making it up to her and taking her everywhere, starting with uncharted worlds, each one more fascinating than the last. They walked hand in hand on a planet with towering crystal forests and under the light of twin moons. Felix playfully conjured tiny flames that danced around them, while Asna's laughter resounded like music in the crystal-clear atmosphere. In another world, they explored an ancient city carved into the cliffs of a mountain range that stretched above the clouds. The architecture might have been lost to time, but it spoke of a forgotten civilization that once reached for the stars. Together, they uncovered forgotten secrets, seemingly enjoying a playful game with each other on who could find out first the reason for the fall of the civilization. Of course, Asna ended up winning as Felix was still stressed out by her tantrums. Soon, they moved to the World Tree, the fairy's dimensional pocket, the hive's nest, and then to different realms, jumping from the spirit realm, the shadow realm, to the quantum realm, making sure to explore all of their mysteries as well. Before long, their travels took them to the edge of the universe, where the light of distant stars began to fade into the unknown. Felix created a small cozy house with its garden and sat with Asna on a swing. He wrapped an arm around Asna's waist, pulling her close while she rested her head on his shoulder. In the silence of the void, they discovered peace in each other's presence, a fantasy for many, but only a few lucky ones could experience. This is it, this is everything I have ever wished for. Asna cuddled in Felix's arms as she murmured with a gentle smile, for this very moment, I don't mind giving up on everything. Asna was imprisoned for 20 million years by the closest beings to her, a family one would say. Such betrayal had damaged her to no end, making one of her long-lost dreams to avenge her childhood. Yet, such hatred, such trauma, in this very moment, she genuinely had no problems giving up on them just to continue living in peace with her beloved. But, Felix thought otherwise. It's too soon to retire, Asna. Felix narrowed his eyes. As long as 3 rulers are alive, as long as we don't find out the verity of this universe, we will be living in a state of insincere happiness. But most importantly, Felix said coldly, the 3 rulers will never give up on reaching the other side. I have no interest in watching them do it. As much as Asna enjoyed this moment, she knew that he was right. Still, she pouted in annoyance, you sure know how to ruin a romantic moment. Chapter 1884. Is this enough of a romantic moment? You call that a romantic moment? Felix suddenly smiled as he slowly turned the swing to the other side and pointed his finger at the infinite void. Still annoyed, Asna squinted her eyes in the direction he was pointing his finger. What am I suppose, is that? Suddenly, she covered her mouth in shock as her widened breathtaking eyes reflected a sparkle at a great distance. Anyone else wouldn't be able to see past a distance sparkle, but in Asna's eyes, she witnessed countless galaxies rearranged across the vast canvas of the cosmos. Rearranged into a pattern that had her breath caught in her throat as she realized what was happening. The galaxies, glowing softly in the distance, spelled out the words. Will you marry me? This sentence rang akin to thunder in her mind over and over again, making her feel like the most loved woman in the universe. The beauty, the thoughtfulness, the love, it was all too much, and she felt her heart pounding in her chest. You, how, when? Before she could even find her voice, Felix turned to face her, his expression filled with warmth and affection. With a smooth graceful movement, he dropped onto one knee, his gaze never leaving hers. He reached into the space beside him and brought out a ring that seemed to defy the very laws of the cosmos. It was a masterpiece of cosmic artistry, crafted from minimized galaxies held together in perfect harmony. The band glimmered with the light of countless stars, seemingly each one representing the infinite moments they had shared together. At its center, a black hole was suspended, but instead of pulling in light, it emitted a radiant glow that formed the shape of a dazzling diamond. Asna, Felix spoke with a voice filled with sincere love, from the moment we met, you have been the light of my life, the force that drives me forward. We've explored the universe together, fought countless battles together, and seen wonders beyond imagination, and through it all, you've been by my side. I can't imagine a future without you. Felix paused and then asked with a faint loving smile, will you marry me? Tears welled up in Asna's eyes, her emotions overwhelming her. The sight of Felix, the man she loved, kneeling before her with the universe itself as his witness, was something she had never expected. Unable to hold back her emotions any longer, Asna nodded, her voice trembling with joy. Yes, Felix, yes, I will marry you. A brilliant smile spread across Felix's face as he gently slid the ring onto her finger, the galaxies within it glittering as they found their new home. Haha! Now, that's a proposal. Congratulations! Thor applauded on with a boastful laugh as he watched them hug each other tightly before turning it into a deep loving kiss. I am so envious. Candace bit her nails, desiring exactly what Felix and Asna had even though she was a succubus. Tisk, it would have been more romantic if I was there to play a tune. Apollo clicked his tongue while playing with the lyre, feeling like he had wasted such a beautiful moment. Shut it and let them enjoy their moment. Eris quietened him down with a single glare. Meanwhile, Felix and Asna didn't seem to even hear them. Their lips never left each other, making them feel like they were in their own world. Soon. Is this enough of a romantic moment for you? Felix chuckled after breaking off Asna's lips. He, more than enough. Asna giggled as she snuggled against his chest. Then, she asked, how did you pull it off? I thought I had close eyes on you. It wasn't really that difficult. Felix grinned as he narrated, to succeed, I had to make sure my intentions stay hidden from everyone. So, I allocated the ring duties to one clone and the galaxy's arrangement to another. Both of them possessed most of my powers, making it quite effortless to pull deserted galaxies closer together in a specific way. Felix smiled wryly, the ring was a different story though. Asna extended her hand, gazing at the magnificent gleaming ring with great fascination and love. You must have used the powers of infinity to shrink galaxies and seal them in the ring forever, right? Asna answered with a big grin as she played with the ring on her finger. Nov, L, B //JNN. If only it was that easy. Felix shook his head, shrinking and sealing entire galaxies into something so small took more effort than I ever imagined. The real challenge, though, was keeping them stable. He indicated to the black hole at the center of the ring, its light reflecting in her sun-like eyes. This black hole has its own gravitational pull, carefully calibrated to spin the galaxies around it at just the right speed. It creates a delicate balance, preventing them from ever crashing into each other. As long as it spins, the galaxies will remain in perfect orbit, forever held together by the force of its gravity. Asna's gaze softened as she listened, her heart swelling with affection. You did all that for me? She whispered, touched by the depth of his effort. Of course. I wanted this ring to be as eternal as our love, something that will last forever, just like us. He grinned as he caressed her cheek. He, aren't you becoming a bit cheesy? Although she was saying this to poke fun at him, everyone could see that she was loving every bit of it. I was always cheesy, I just never got the chance to express it. Felix winked jokingly. All right, don't push me too far. Asna chuckled, you are making me feel like I am going to pounce on you. What if that's what I wanted? Felix brought her in closer to him while his hand was snaking under her clothes, attempting to prey on her delicate parts. Behave, don't be bad now, we already waited this far along, might as well do it right after our wedding. Asna chuckled as she dragged his hand away. Wedding hey? Felix smiled, unbothered by her rejection. What do you have in mind? Something big and glamorous or small and family-friendly? You already handled the big and glamorous part, I just want something small and cozy. Asna smiled, maybe a wedding in your consciousness space? Everyone I care about is already there. I feel the same. Felix agreed. The instant a decision was made, everyone chimed into their conversation. Leave the music to me, Apollo smirked. Then, I will handle designing the venue. Cyclope proposed. I guess I will oversee the process. Candace smiled. Most tenants presented their talents in hopes of creating the best possible wedding for those two celestials. Felix and Asna merely glanced at each other and chuckled, leaving them to handle things out. Of course, as the bride, Asna was going to keep a piercing eye on everything. While Felix seemed to be living in romantic bliss, a big part of him was occupied with just one thought. What are they preparing for us? He thought as his eyes roamed to the infinite void, seemingly desiring to know all of the three rulers' cards. While he should feel at peace, knowing that Asna's breakthrough was enough to deal with the three rulers, deep down, he felt that things weren't going to be in their favor. Chapter 1885. A small, simple wedding. Time went by as the day of the big wedding had arrived at last. Candace had done a great job organizing the wedding by turning the town plaza into the ceremony stage and decorating it with petals, vines, and blooming flowers. The tenants were sitting on white chairs side by side while their eyes were affixed on Felix, who was standing underneath an arch crafted out of white wood. Felix wore a finely tailored suit, elevating his celestial breathtaking appearance to a new height. He had a faint gentle smile as he gazed at the other side, awaiting the arrival of his soon-to-be wife. Asna didn't keep the party waiting as she emerged from a pathway lined with blooming roses, her presence lighting up the entire garden. She wore a beautiful white gown that was adorned with delicate flowers, matching the glow in her eyes. With each step taken, her eyes glowed more, seemingly impatient to tie the knot with the love of her life. Those lovebirds are finally together, Thor remarked, holding in his emotions. I still remember them bickering and fighting each second. Hormungandr smiled, now, they can't get enough of each other. The rest of the tenants watched in silence, their hearts gushing with pride and joy for the couple they had grown to care for so deeply. Each of them knew how much this moment meant to Felix and Asna, and they were honored to be part of it. Soon, Asna reached Felix's side, taking his hands in hers, their fingers intertwining perfectly. They exchanged a soft knowing smile and then turned to face the officiator. Elder Kraken had offered to do the honor and no one fought him for it. With a gentle but authoritative voice, Elder Kraken spoke, Felix, Asna, we are gathered here in this garden of life, to witness the union of two souls who have traveled through the cosmos together, forging a bond stronger than the stars themselves. Felix and Asna shared a glance, their hands tightly clasped together, feeling the gravity of the moment. Elder Kraken scanned the gathered tenants, and then turned his attention back to the couple. Marriage is a journey, Elder Kraken continued, much like the journey you both have already taken. It is filled with challenges, triumphs, and moments of both joy and sorrow. But it is a journey that, when taken with love and commitment, leads to a union that transcends time and space. Elder Kraken paused for a moment and then smiled at Felix. Before the gathered witnesses and the cosmos itself, I ask you both, do you, Felix, take Asna as your partner, to stand by her side through all of life's trials and joys, to protect, cherish, and love her for all eternity? I do. Felix's voice was firm and filled with emotion. And do you, Asna, take Felix as your partner, to walk beside him through all of life's adventures, to support, honor, and love him for all eternity? I do. Asna said softly, her amber eyes shining with unshed tears. With those words, Elder Kraken raised his tentacles in a graceful gesture. Then by the ancient powers I wield, and in the presence of all who stand here, I declare you bound in love and unity, for now and for all time. The garden seemed to bloom even more vibrantly as the declaration was made, flowers bursting into full bloom and the air filling with the scent of life itself. Elder Kraken's eyes beamed with satisfaction as he spoke the final blessing. You may kiss the bride. Felix and Asna turned to each other, their eyes locking with a deep, unspoken connection. As they leaned in to share their first kiss as a married couple, the tenants erupted into joyful applause, their cheers echoing through the garden, while Elder Kraken observed over the scene with a faint, knowing smile. As Asna desired, the wedding was simple, family-friendly, and small. Felix wanted to invite his friends but then realized that it was best not to. Whether it was Selfie, Bodadi, or Olivia, all of them were living their new lives away from his chaotic life. It was best not to invite them back in, not when the three rulers had their eyes on him akin to a hawk, hoping for him to show a tint of weakness. Thus, he kept them in the dark and went on his way to their honeymoon. Felix chose no other place than his beloved home, Earth. After arriving, Felix and Asna turned up at a small cottage near a lake with trees surrounding them everywhere. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Wife. Felix extended his hand welcomingly towards the entrance of the cottage's door with a big smile. Husband, aren't you planning to carry me in? Asna giggled, seemingly not used to calling each other this way. You are strong enough to carry galaxies, yet still acting this way. Felix rolled his eyes at her antics. Still, he went on and carried her like a princess, watching her play with her feet in enjoyment as he walked inside the cottage. You questioned for this? With a sly grin, Felix suddenly kept walking towards the bedroom instead of putting her down. I am not ready yet. Asna hit the back of his back in protest, but she didn't seem like she was truly against the idea. Her protests were more a shy display than anything. After entering the bedroom, Felix placed her gently on the bed while she was still in her stunning wedding gown. He grinned softly as he touched her cheek, memories of their time together in the UVR surfaced in his mind. They had pretty much done everything besides the real deal. Felix was happier than ever to know that they had saved this special moment, instead of wasting it in a virtual simulation. Tonight, I am all yours. Asna whispered as she matched the love in his eyes, knowing that there was nothing to be nervous about. Slowly, Felix leaned in, capturing her lips in a tender kiss that deepened with every passing second. The world outside ceased to exist as they lost themselves in each other, their connection growing stronger with every touch, every breath. As their kiss became more passionate, Felix's hands slid down her back, pulling her closer, feeling the warmth of her body against his. Soon, their bodies pressed together, the warmth between them growing as they explored each other with a mixture of tenderness and desire. The night was filled with whispered words, soft gasps, and the quiet rustle of sheets as they consummated their marriage, their bond becoming physical at last. As two celestials, the moment they let go of their control, their intertwined bodies released great amounts of heavenly energy, lighting up the entire cottage and the surrounding area. Outside, the lake gleamed under their light, a perfect reflection of the love that flowed between them. The tenants had no clue about any of this as Felix had already sealed the connection, leaving them up to speculate. As the cottage was filled with content moans and rough breathing, one could only wonder how long would they last. After all, it was near impossible for celestials to be exhausted from such activity. Yet, no one would have ever expected them to go at it for more than 4 seasons, never leaving their bedroom even once. After an entire year of going at it strong, it looked like they still had no plans of stopping anytime soon. They had been waiting for this moment for so long, it wouldn't be far-fetched to think they may never leave the bedroom. Chapter 1886 Watch What You Wish For. Felix and Asna went on to spend their honeymoon in each other's embrace, making up to all the years of the separation. Since farming celestial energy was going to take hundreds of thousands of years if not millions before the process started to slow down, they didn't feel the need to put a stop to their honeymoon. Just like that, close to 100,000 years had gone by in the matter universe. For immortals like Felix and Asna, those years went by in the blink of an eye without much of a change in their daily lives. However, the same couldn't be said about the SG Alliance and the universe as a whole. 100,000 years was more than enough for thousands of civilizations to rise and fall. Still, the biggest change had to be related to the human race. After this much time passed, new generations came to life and old ones died out eventually. After all, the average lifespan of even the strongest bloodliners was less than 100,000 years unless their bloodlines boosted their longevity. Nov. L. B //JNN. There was no need to mention the commoners. After most of the old generation passed on, the new generation came in stronger than ever with their new elemental cultivation system. The universe had helped the humans born from the generation that Felix helped. This resulted in the birth of powerful and capable humans across the entire Milky Way galaxy. They were so strong that most races feared and respected the human race as a collective now, pushing their rank to the top 3 in the SG Alliance. They were only below the Watchers and Dragons. This time, they did it as a collective instead of relying on a few individuals to carry them. Of course, while Felix had done most of the work, this kind of development wouldn't have been possible without Olivia. After 100,000 years, little Oli had already grown to be one of the biggest pillars in the SG Alliance and the human race. She also got married and had kids, and her kids had kids too, creating her own Maxwell dynasty. Each time Felix checked on her, he always felt happy and proud of what she had become. Of course, he didn't show himself, but he did help her maintain her youthful appearance forever by manipulating some reality strings. As for Noah, Felix had received news from Lord Hades that he had finally found his little sister's soul and brought her to the heavenly plane. The moment Felix received the news, he requested Lord Hades to delete Noah's memories about his promise of finding his grandfather. He just wanted him to expend his time with his little sister instead of chasing after his grandfather's spirit when he could easily do it. Noah had no clue about any of this and spent his days in the heavenly plane, continuing to protect his little sister akin to her guardian angel. Meanwhile, Boredom had become a big shot in the Space Worms transportation company and was living his life to the fullest, building his own tribe and eating whatever that came to his mind. This had made him so fat that Felix feared that he would end up blowing up from too plenty food instead of dying a natural death. As an old friend, Felix did him a small favor and manipulated his reality to make him unable to gain weight regardless of the food he consumed. Last but not least, Selphie. She had already grown to be a fine queen of the elves, replacing Queen Alfreda. She threw herself into her elven empire, elevating the elves' position higher in the alliance. But, unlike Olivia, she never got married or seemed to bother with the notion of finding someone to tie the knot with. Her fingers were ringless and she seemed to be adamant about leaving them as such. This was exactly what Felix had feared would happen when he wanted to help her move on by getting rid of their race's obsessive nature. Alas, she made her decision to leave her emotions be and he respected it. All he could do was pray for her from a distance while making sure to never come in contact with her as he knew that it would do nothing but open a massive wound in her heart. 100,000 years, a long, very long period for some, but a mere seconds for few. At the moment, Felix and Asna could be seen sitting on the balcony of their small house at the edge of the universe. How plenty celestial energy did you collect by now? Asna asked casually. I am sure it's enough to secure your awakening plus have plenty more for the battle. Felix smiled, the boys have been hard at work. He wasn't lying as Apollo, Nemo, and his clones had been hard at labor deconstructing entire galaxies and bringing them into either void creatures, dark creatures, or just clusters of mixed energy. Felix then turned them into celestial energy and stored it within him. After 100,000 years, he had an unimaginable amount of celestial energy that would make even the 3 rulers envious. Why are you asking? Felix sensed a change in her energy. I don't know, it feels too peaceful. Asna replied while gazing above her, maybe I am just being paranoid for no reason, but I expected those old fogies to make a move by now. Make a move? Felix raised an eyebrow, how? They can't enter or use their full powers here without the universe's interference. Felix also used to be a bit paranoid, thinking that the 3 rulers would find a way to come at them regardless of the circumstances. After all, they had been coming at him non-stop way before. But, he came to accept their hopelessness, knowing that it was simply impossible. They might not be able to target us, but they can stoop low and target the mortals. Asna frowned. I know you have your friends protected, but the rest of the universe is a free target. Felix narrowed his eyes in silence. He would be lying if he said that this wicked thought never crossed his mind. He knew that the three rulers were more than capable of killing entire civilizations without erupting a universal's wrath. The universe didn't care plenty about the death of the mortals, but more so about the way they proceeded off. For example, if Felix were to slap a mortal to death, the universe wouldn't care. But, if he were to abuse his laws to make it happen, then it would be a different story. Just like how the three rulers have smitten Felix and got scot-free, they could do the same with the others. That's why Felix had placed celestial protection on his friends without them knowing about it. I doubt they will go for it. Felix soon shook his head. They know as celestials our emotions can't be manipulated. I know, but I still have a bad feeling. Asna's pupils thinned. For those monsters, there is no such a thing as limits. Even if they knew such a method might not work, they will still try it. Let them give it their best. Felix remarked coldly, I am not coming at them unless I have enough celestial energy to bury them once and for all. Sometimes, one should double-check what he was wishing for. In a peaceful city, where the sun shone brightly and children's laughter filled the air, an ominous alteration suddenly took place. Without warning, the sky darkened, and then bolts of sizzling golden light rained down from the heavens, striking indiscriminately. The first to be hit was a group of children playing in a park. The bright lightning bolts pierced through them, their joyful screams turning into cries of agony as their bodies crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Micah. Deaea. R. Ah, ah, a. The parents sitting on the benches, chatting and laughing just earlier, were now staring at the ruined corpses of their children with horrified looks. Before the trauma could even register in their minds, the golden bolts landed on them a moment later, killing them instantly. This situation wasn't happening just in the park, but across the entire planet as men and women, young and old, were struck down by the same unforgiving force. The light was not just a weapon, it was a merciless executioner, delivering death in the most excruciating manner possible. Entire families were obliterated in an instant, their homes shattered by the divine wrath descending upon them. The scene was one of pure horror, an unprovoked massacre that defied all logic. The planet chosen for such a slaughter was none other than Mars in the solar system. This caused Felix to sense the disturbance from his clone situated on Earth for its protection. When he extended his senses and noticed the ongoing massacre, his expression couldn't help but turn cold. They really proceeded for it, he uttered with an icy tone as he shared the scenes with Isna and the tenants. Chapter 1887 A Universal Massacre. Felix, bad news. Lord Loki reported with a solemn tone, I am afraid this is happening on a galaxy scale. I am receiving news that millions of humans are getting taken to flies each second. This is horrible. Hormungandr frowned, are they seeking to exterminate the entire human race? They don't care as long as it pushes Felix and Isna to enter the Eternal Kingdom, Fenrir uttered. On the other side, the three rulers were seen sitting on their platforms while having thousands of spiritual mirrors opened before them. Each mirror was showing a different massacre occurring across the entire Milky Way galaxy. Pain screams and children's cries resounded loudly in the dimensional pocket, yet, the three rulers didn't seem moved in the slightest. Let's see how far can he hold. Amonare smiled coldly. He might be a celestial, but his origins are still of a mortal birth. Medusa said calmly, as much as he can control his emotions, he isn't going to stand in the corner and watch his origin get erased because of him. The three rulers seemed to be right as the moment Felix found out that the entire galaxy was under attack, he teleported near it and didn't hesitate to cast a celestial barrier around it. The celestial barrier immediately intercepted the three rulers' divine thunderstorms and put a halt to this unprovoked madness. When the three rulers saw this, they weren't bothered, instead, faint smiles painted their divine visages, anticipating this kind of reaction. They knew it was the only way to protect the galaxy from attacks since they were using divinities. Switch target. With the same cold intent, the three rulers dropped the Milky Way galaxy and targeted the Witch Empire. When Felix received the news, he swiftly sent a clone to create the same celestial barrier, not wanting the eradication of his master's legacy. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning. The three rulers left no race or empire untouched, creating a wide-scale panic across the SG Alliance. The Scallions' leaders found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the disaster. Emergency broadcasts echoed across every communication channel, urging people to stay indoors and seek shelter, but even they knew it was futile. The thunderclouds were too powerful, too random, there was no pattern to the destruction, no logic to the strikes, just chaos and instant death. Meanwhile, Felix was left with a dire decision. He could either protect the entire SG Alliance at a great cost of celestial energy or choose the most important targets to him personally and leave the rest to survive on their own. In both cases, he would be wasting celestial energy continuously, the only difference was the quantity spent. "This is what I feared," Asna said with a concerned tone. After finishing off the unprotected areas, the three rulers don't need to attack anymore. You will be forced to spend great amounts of celestial energy to protect galaxies daily, and this will be counter-initiative to our plans. "I know," Felix uttered coldly. He realized that the three rulers no longer needed to attack the protected territories and he would be on the losing side. For a small price of celestial energy, they slowed down Felix's farming by at least 30% forever. This percentage reflected only if Felix cared enough about humans and some other races instead of the protection of the entire SG Alliance. If he went for the latter, he would be actually losing more celestial energy than he was bringing in. This was expected from the three rulers. Eris held her chin thoughtfully. The question is, why now? Why not make their move before? Are they doing this to just slow down Felix's celestial energy collection or force him to enter the Eternal Kingdom much earlier than planned? Lady Sphinx wondered too. Those were two different answers with two different outcomes. If the rulers did this to slow him down, they could have done it much sooner before he collected this much celestial energy. Lord Marduk shook his head. It must be the latter. I believe they were also preparing for the war, and now, they finally feel like they were ready to take them on. The tenants were left staring at each other in silence. They realized that for the three rulers to hasten the start of the war, they must be sitting on a dangerous trump card. After all, how could they not fear Asna even when they knew that her awakening was going to empower her to a different level? At the same time, couldn't they have done this to make sure to slow Felix down while also scaring him into not making a move? Lord Shiva added expressionlessly. Nov. L. B //JNN. You implying reverse psychology? Lord Loki raised an eyebrow. You are looking too much into it. Asna snorted. Those bastards will not go this far to avoid a confrontation. I am certain they are trying to force us to enter the Eternal Kingdom. She is right. Eris nodded in approval. As one of the closest unigens to the three rulers, she understood how they carried business. Their absolute omnipotence made them uncaring about running such little schemes. Once they were ready for battle, they would do everything in their power to make it happen. Right now, the ball was in Felix's and Asna's hands. Would they ignore the woes and massacre of the majority of the Scallions' population and continue farming celestial energy for the next millions of years, or... I am sorry, Felix, but I am biting. Asna decided with a bitter smile as she watched the unforgiving scenes of the three rulers leaving behind on each planet. I just can't watch as those monsters punish those weaker than them for something they have no control over. She murmured, I know the feeling more than anyone else. While Asna could easily turn her emotions off and be cold and distant to those mortals, who she had no connection with, she suddenly found out that it was too difficult. If they were to be killing each other, she couldn't give a damn, but when their death was associated with celestial matters, which they had no clue about, she simply couldn't turn a blind eye. Not when she knew that she had what it took to stop it. To be honest, I have the same intention. Felix smiled back at her, his eyes spilling with a hint of serenity. Really? Asna's eyes lit up. Why? I thought you said that nothing would affect your decision. Even the tenants were taken aback by his sudden switch. Ever since Felix ascended and became in control of his emotions, he always scared those a bit as it made them feel like he no longer had a personality. It was like he was a robot capable of knowing exactly how as well as when to feel. Such control might seem great, but it got rid of anything humane in him. This made those fear the day when he would end up making a decision that went against the morals of the real Felix as well as he wouldn't even know it. I always decided that the best course of action is to be heartless, to turn a blind eye to the suffering of the innocent in order to ensure the death of the three rulers. Felix spoke while continuing to send clones to protect more nations. After all, the logic appeared sound at the time. Why waste precious celestial energy upon lives that were, in the grand scheme of things, insignificant? If it meant saving enough power to strike down the rulers, wasn't it worth the sacrifice? Chapter 1888 Asna's Awakening. Suddenly, his face broke into a foolish smile as the faces of the countless people who had died flashed before his eyes. Children, families, and entire worlds were all snuffed out while he had convinced himself it was the necessary thing to do. It chewed at him, this cold, calculated decision he had made, and for the first time in a long while, Felix felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel: regret. He turned, and his gaze fell on Asna. Then, he continued to speak with a voice lanced with self-reflection, but now, I'm faced with a choice I should have seen before. I can be the bad guy who lets the universe burn to achieve a goal, or I can be the good guy who tries to protect those who need it, no matter the cost. Asna listened quietly, her eyes never leaving his. Felix took a deep breath, his next words tinged with the bitterness of his own mistakes. I realized something, Asna. If I shut down my emotions, if I watch the entire universe burn just to save celestial energy, I'll be no different than the three rulers. No, he corrected himself, his voice filled with self-loathing, I'll be worse. Because I provoked this massacre while having the power to protect those weaker than me, and yet I chose not to. Felix. Lady Sphinx and his masters showed faint smiles, seemingly proud that he wasn't taking the faster road. He could easily turn off his emotions and none of this would matter, but he refused to do so. It was for a simple reason. I don't want to be like them. I don't want to become a monster who sacrifices everything for a single goal. If I do, then what's the point of any of this? What's the point of defeating the rulers if I become as heartless and cruel as they are? What will my grandfather and Nimmo think of me? He sighed. Asna stepped closer, her hand reaching out to gently touch his cheek. You've always had a choice. And you're right, it's not just about power. It's about what you do with it. I believe the best use of it should put your heart at ease, not the opposite. She said. Felix closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her words. He understood that his motives were always wrong and flawed, making him truly a horrible person in the eyes of outsiders. To think he was willing to sacrifice the Skallians' population for the sake of revenge and obtaining the truth. Just the thought of committing to it made him sick in his stomach, like the lives of those below him no longer matter in the grand scheme of things. If it was so, then he was truly no different than the three rulers. No more turning a blind eye. No more making excuses. I'll be the protector I should have been all along. Felix smiled gently, I don't mind losing many things, but not my humanity. I refuse to, regardless of how simple life will be if I did it. Asna smiled with a light of pride and love in her eyes. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Felix nodded, feeling the burdens of his past decisions begin to lift. The three rulers had shown him what true heartlessness looked like, and in that reflection, he had found the strength to reject that path. He would not be like them, he would fight with all he had, not just to win, but to save. And in doing so, he would recover the humanity he had almost lost. I think it's time I awaken. Asna's demeanor soon changed to being heartless as she uttered coldly, they want us to come, it will be rude to leave them waiting. It will be rude indeed, Felix smirked coldly as he teleported both of them to his celestial form in the void of the quantum realm. He left his clones to intercept the three rulers' attacks and focused on helping Asna awaken, having no idea how it was going to end. All he knew was that he needed to feed Asna with a godly amount of celestial energy. "You ready? Hit me." Asna nodded as she sat cross-legged while Felix's palm was placed on her back. Without delay, Felix began to pour liquefied celestial energy into Asna, who in turn, didn't hesitate to devour it. This kicked off the awakening process almost immediately as her entire form began to glow with pure celestial light. The transformation started at the roots of Asna's fiery crimson hair as the profound red faded into a pristine white that spread outward, like frost creeping over a flame. The end result was that her hair turned milky white, with the lower strands appearing as red as blood. As the energy continued to pour into her, Asna's aura shifted dramatically. Her aura was releasing a sense of peace and purity alternatively of her usual overwhelming authority. It also radiated with a holy light, so pure and pristine that it seemed to cleanse the very space around her. This kind of change took Felix and the others by surprise. Why does it seem like Mom is becoming holier? Nemo wondered in curiosity. This is indeed peculiar. Eris knitted her eyebrows in puzzlement. Just like the rest, she believed that Asna's awakening would add more to her overwhelming aura, making it near impossible to stare at her in the eyes. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Instead, she was releasing a sacred, untainted aura, like she became the embodiment of purity, the purest form in the entire universe. Yet, the shocking part had to come. Felix and the tenants were soon left with widened eyes as her awakening progressed, causing the emergence of 7 ink tattoos to materialize on her chest. Those tattoos resembled the 7 sins immensely in their positioning, but their appearance and colors were nothing alike. There was a dove, a dog, a swan, an ant, a tortoise, an elephant, and lastly, an owl. The tattoos glowed with a soft light, their intricate designs weaving together to form a beautiful and harmonious pattern. "It can't be, are those really, they are real?" Felix mumbled to himself, containing his shock and disbelief. "The 7 virtues." Apollo continued for him with a dazed tone, "I can't believe there are laws for them too." When the tenants heard this, most of them were left stunned speechless. They knew about the 7 sins and could understand them being laws due to their varied effects, but the 7 virtues? How can the 7 virtues be laws? Candace remarked with a confused tone. "It actually makes more sense to have them than not." Lady Sphinx grinned wryly, "The cosmos has always shown us that balance is everything for it. That's why there is a counterforce for almost everything. The moment the 7 sins laws were introduced, I was always wondering about the existence of the 7 virtues. Who would have thought, they would be locked up within Asna's core, awaiting her awakening to emerge?" While most of the tenants nodded in understanding, Felix's eyes were still affixed on Asna's tattoos. Unlike them, his mind went further ahead and made a connection that he never expected in his life. "I see now, I see now." Felix murmured absent-mindedly, "Lilith, I understand now." Chapter 1889 Lilith's Memories. Felix realized that the reason Lilith had control over Asna's core was due to the 7 sins and 7 virtues being both locked on Asna's core originally, but during the creation of the Unigen cores, they were separated. The 7 sins were attached to the void core while the 7 virtues were left behind in Asna's core. Felix uttered with a look of enlightenment, since those two sets of laws were twin counterforces, separating them is the same as separating Apollo's light/darkness laws. Even in different cores, they might still have a bit of control over the other laws. "Your reasoning makes sense." Eris supported his theory. It never made sense for Lilith's 7 sins to be attached to void, but now. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. The tenants nodded in understanding as they realized that the 7 sins were never supposed to be attached to any Unigen core. They were a set of laws, which should have remained in Asna's core with the 7 virtues since it didn't make sense to separate them. This somewhat explains how Lilith was capable of using Asna's core abilities. Lady Sphinx added with a frown, "But why one? Why did she disappear after using one? How come she had to try so hard to access Asna's core if she originally had this much control over it? All of those were valid questions, but unfortunately, no one had the answers or the time to think of them. Asna's awakening was on the verge of completion as the bright holy light around her started dying out. When Felix saw this, he knew that he could not start the battle with the three rulers with so many questions surrounding Asna/Lilith. In his eyes, this might be Lilith's plan to return somehow after Asna awakened. There were just too many connections to skim past such a possibility. This is going to cost me a leg. With a firm look, Felix tapped into the fabric of reality and swiftly searched for one specific rule. The rule that ensured Asna's expulsion from the matter universe immediately after her awakening and becoming a true celestial. He altered the rule just enough to help her remain behind temporarily. He did it by slowing down the speed of the celestial chains. They were still going to snatch her, but not as instantaneously. When the alteration took part at last, Felix realized that it had consumed at least 5% of his total celestial energy reserve. He couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. I hope it was worth it. He quickly dropped the thought and refocused on Asna, who had finally concluded her awakening phase. Whether it was Felix or the tenants, no one was capable of taking their eyes off her as she started resembling a true goddess of purity. Her hair was milky white with red tips while her skin was shimmering with pure light continually, like touching it was a blasphemous act. However, when she opened her eyes, everyone was surprised not by their absolute beauty, but by a single tear trickling down her cheek. Asna looked at Felix, her eyes filled with an untold amount of sadness and gloom. An unexpected reaction for someone who possessed just awakened to their full strength. Asna, what happened? Felix swiftly went to her and swept the tear gently from her cheek with his sleeve. It's Lilith. Lilith. Tell me, did she do anything bad to you? Do you feel her presence inside? Felix immediately got defensive, his eyes activating divine detection and scanning Asna all over. No, it's not that, Asna tried to speak up, but in the end, she was too overwhelmed. She took a deep breath and then murmured, "It's best if I just showed you." The moment she said this, she tapped into Felix's forehead, putting a memory orb directly in his mind. Felix regained control over his emotions and dove into the memory orb while making sure to share his vision with everyone else. Billions of years ago, Lilith could be seen relaxing lazily on a lavish throne, her gaze drifting across the grand chamber in disinterest. She sighed while twirling a lock of her dark silken hair around her finger, her thoughts beginning to wonder about doing something to get rid of her chronic boredom. Perhaps I should stir the pot a little, she mused. Hephaestus has been far too quiet lately. A little accident in his territory could make things interesting. And if Poseidon had been to be conveniently blamed, well, that could lead to quite the spectacle. Before she could finish her wicked plan, the first ruler's indifferent voice resounded in her mind. Lilith, your presence is required. Oh ho? Sounds interesting. Lilith's gaze sparkled in intrigue, teleporting from her throne immediately. When she reappeared, she was sitting on her platform within the celestial dimensional pocket next to Uranus and Eris. Even Ares was attending, making her interest grow bigger. Since everyone is here, I will make it brief. The first ruler spoke calmly, the tablet has released a new instruction, pay a visit to the Echoing Tower. The Echoing Tower. Uranus frowned, isn't that the new emerging anomaly in the quantum realm? Yes, it seems that there is an important treasure behind the birth of the tower called the Stone of Reality by the natives. Medusa nodded, we have to retrieve it. It could be one of the keys to our great escape. Since we can't make a move personally, I believe you four are more than capable of retrieving it before anyone can notice your departure. Lilith and the rest glanced at each other for a moment, noticing that the bulk possessed no problems with taking the mission. Eris wanted to study the new treasure, Uranus would do anything for their goal, Lilith and Ares seemed bored as hell and would do it for their own sake. Thus, all four of them shrugged their shoulders and took off toward the quantum realm. unbothered by the lake of reward. For beings like them, not even celestial energy could move them to do something against their will. Soon, the memory screen went black and the tenants conversed with each other. Eris already showed us what happened below. Did something different happen to Lilith? Candace wondered. Lilith was believed to be the only one who got too close to the stone of reality. Felix narrowed his eyes. It seems like she has indeed touched it and saw a vision of her own. When he said this, the memory orb activated again and showed them a scene of Ares, Eris, and Uranus being heavily resisted by the stone of reality. Regardless of what ability they used, they weren't able to pierce through the miasma surrounding the stone of reality. When everyone saw how Uranus almost got himself killed, escaping barely, Eris shook her head and said, "Let's head out. If even abusing our laws doesn't work, nothing will." As she said this, there had been already 3 celestial chains tightening around her. Ares and Uranus were also under the same punishment. Tisk, how can a mere stone be able to resist us this hard? Uranus clicked his tongue in irritation. It's indeed fascinating. Ares murmured while scratching his chin, such a treasure must be on a celestial level somehow. I think so too, only the 3 rulers must have what it takes to retrieve it. Eris nodded as she turned around, let's get out of here. Just as Ares and Uranus wanted to follow her, Lilith remarked with a hint of intrigue in her voice, not yet, I haven't given it a try. Chapter 1890 Lilith's Memories 2. Lilith, don't be stubborn, and let's leave. Uranus said coldly, it will be annoying to leave the tower with all of us chained up. He has a point, we need your protection. Eris backed him. Unfortunately, Lilith ignored them and floated towards the stone of reality while coating herself in protective barriers, mixing in her 7 sins with the void powers. As she disappeared inside the thick miasma, the 3 Unigens shook their heads and sat down, awaiting her return. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. The miasma seemed laced with a protective ambience, making it impossible for the Unigens to see past a couple of meters, thus, anyone going at its depth would be on his own. What Felix experienced during his attempt was nothing compared to this mission, making him realize that the stone of reality was its strongest possible form at their time. Yet, Lilith didn't seem to be having as much difficulty as the others. While they were actively being kept away, the miasma seemed to be inviting her. The barriers were still being messed with, but not as heavily as the others. I was right, it's calling for me. Lilith murmured in intrigue as her eyes were affixed on the pulsing stone of reality. Each heartbeat sent a cryptic message that somehow she understood. Come, come, come. The closer she got to the stone of reality, the more intense the feeling got until finally, she was merely an inch away from it. Without an ounce of hesitation, Lilith reached out with her hand and touched the stone of reality. The moment she did so, the scenery around her was transformed into an infinite void with only one thing around, a transparent humanoid figure with 7 celestial hearts beating in sync. Instead of being scared or confused, Lilith merely cracked a faint smile and said, now, it's getting fun. The universe's consciousness showed her the same vision he showed Felix, explaining the birth and creation of the universe. How every celestial core had a big and a small role, and without them, their universe would be incomplete. But then, the vision didn't stop and continued showing her more details, details that Felix and the rest had no clue about. Felix and the others opened their eyes wide as they watched 5 celestial hearts split up from the main body and spread out akin to gleaming meteors. The 3 rulers' hearts headed to the same destination while the elemental heart went in the opposite direction. The stone of reality kept reducing in size until it disappeared inside the atomic world. Meanwhile, the origin of Law's heart, Asna's core, was devoured by the universe's heart. This left behind only the universe's heart at the center of the featureless figure. Felix paused the memory and kept staring at the happenings with furrowed eyebrows, deep in his thoughts. So, the separation of the hearts happened right after the birth of the universe. While the rest of the hearts have known origins, what happened to the elemental heart? Felix was told by Eris that his human mortal heart was the celestial elemental heart, and if he wanted it to ascend, he needed to gather all the laws/elements. But, it seemed like that might not be the case. I said it's only a theory. Eris remarked, it made the most sense for your human heart to be the elemental heart. I still believe in it. There are just too many clues pointing to it. Who knows? Felix said, let's keep watching. The moment he turned it on, everyone was dazed by the sight of the universe's heart releasing light arrows in countless directions. Each pulse carried in it a Unigen core, representing a distinct set of universal laws. Hephaestus core was the first to be released, hot, and blazing with the intensity of 1,000 suns, recognizable anywhere. Next, a deep blue core flashed into existence, its surface rippling like water. Poseidon's serene core sent waves of calm energy throughout the cosmos. Then, it was followed by Apollo's core, Eris core, Uranus core, and the list goes on, leaving Felix and his companions to observe a myriad of colors and energies filling the void. Soon, the spectacle concluded, and silence returned, but Lilith, Felix, and the others all shared a similar question. Where is my core? Where is Lilith's core? It turned out, neither the Void Core nor the Seven Sins laws were released with the group. This drew Lilith's attention, causing her drop her careless act at last. She started to feel that she was about to witness the reason she was called here. Her intuition was right. Under everyone's stunned eyes, a never-seen-before core came into existence from within the universe's heart. It was a small sphere with 2 wings on its back. The right wing was as unsullied as freshly fallen snow with white feathers, gleaming brightly in the void. The left wing resembled a deathly cursed wing of a demon. It was dark red with black feathers and was releasing an ominous aura. The sphere itself was split in half in a wavy motion, each side symbolizing their wing's aura. It looked like everything was in harmony even when both forces defined the term opposition. It can't be. Don't tell me that Asna and Lilith are. Oh, my God! Everyone was quick-witted enough to realize that this core represented the 7 sins and the 7 virtues, which meant, a Unigen was supposed to be born with those 2 sets of laws. But, the next scene changed the natural course. The core was split right from the middle akin to a cracked egg. Then, the right symbolizing the 7 virtues was attached to Asna's core within the universe's heart, while the left side stayed floating for a mere moment before its new home emerged. The Void Core. Under the dazed looks of the viewers, the left wing merged with the Void Core and changed its entire demeanor, taking over it completely. It started letting out an ominous evil aura too, while the 7 sins symbols appeared once in a while on its surface. Without anticipating for anyone's reaction, the newly birthed core flew right past Lilith's face, awakening her from her daze. What's the meaning of this? Lilith inquired with a solemn tone as she gazed at the featureless being. By now, she knew that she was experiencing a vision and the one before her must be the consciousness of the universe. While she held her cool before, after seeing what happened to her origin, she demanded answers. Alas, just like what happened to Felix, the featureless being ignored her completely and carried on with the vision. But, Felix paused everything, unable to watch more after the latest revelation. Unlike Lilith in the vision, they knew much more and the truth left them staring at each other in silence, seemingly anticipating for someone to bring it up. For such situations, it was always good to have someone like Apollo. I actually can't believe it, Apollo remarked with an amazed tone, uncaring about the solemn atmosphere. Asna and Lilith have shared the same core? Doesn't this mean they are twin sisters? Chapter 1891 Lilith's Memories. 3. Wait, how come Mom is that old hag's sister? Aren't all laws part of my mom? Doesn't this mean she shares a similar connection to the rest of the Unigens too? Nimmo tilted his head in confusion. His questions were valid since all laws were considered part of Asna's core, which meant the rest of the Unigens should be considered as her brothers/sisters too. Nimmo, you are seeing just the surface. Asna patted Nimmo's head with a gentle smile, she finally understood her origins after awakening her memories and Lilith's memories. I am not the consciousness of the origin of Law's celestial heart. I am the consciousness of the universe's 7 virtues, just like Lilith is the consciousness of the 7 sins. She dropped a bombshell, leaving Nimmo and some of the tenants stunned. How come? Candace murmured in disbelief, didn't your consciousness awaken before you can unlock the 7 virtues? Indeed, Asna was born as a little child without even knowing about the existence of the 7 virtues. How could she be its primary consciousness? It's simple really. Felix clarified solemnly as he eyed the universe's consciousness. Unlike what we have assumed, there is only one consciousness for the universe, and it's the one we are staring at. The celestial hearts shouldn't give birth to their consciousness since it defied the existence of the one and only universe. That's why the stone of reality, the elemental heart, and the universe's heart haven't awakened their own consciousness after spending just as much time, if not more, than the 3 celestials. If it's like this, then how come the 3 rulers have awakened? Thor inquired. I don't know, but I am sure it is something similar to Asna's situation. Felix replied, the universe consciousness might have breathed life in them personally. It's the only proper explanation. Some tenants agreed with Felix's theory while the majority were still pretty confused since this new revelation had flipped everything they knew about the Celestials' origins. They believed that the 3 rulers were born on their own after the 3 celestial languages gained their will. This was the premise that even the 3 rulers adhered to and accepted. But in reality, it shouldn't make sense since it took billions of years for just elementals to gain their consciousness. Foremother's Siamese galaxy was the biggest evidence. How could the 3 rulers awaken their consciousness on their own by absorbing energy while still being at the very beginnings of the universe's birth? It's true, the math isn't mathing. Apollo nodded. We also used to believe that our birth was based on the laws awakening their consciousness, but then we discovered that the universe's heart handled it. Indeed, if the origin of Law's heart gave birth to Asna's consciousness on its own, then the stone of reality should have its own consciousness by now. Fenrir said calmly, it spent more time compared to all hearts combined. Interesting, really interesting. Lady Sphinx murmured while tapping her finger on her elbow thoughtfully. What's on your mind? Hormungandr raised an eyebrow in intrigue. I am starting to think that the 7 virtues and 7 sins weren't supposed to be laws in the first place. Lady Sphinx remarked, catching everyone off guard. What do you mean? Think about it. Lady Sphinx clarified, the 7 virtues and 7 desires represent the universe's fundamental moral and ethical principles. They shouldn't be laws encompassing the universe's reality like the rest of the laws. Their existence is null in the grand scheme of things and does not affect the foundations of reality. How can kindness, greed, wrath, patience, and the others be considered one of the universal laws that govern us? I can understand gravity, water, light, darkness, fire, etc., but those 14 laws make no sense as much as their powers are overwhelming. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. This got me thinking. Lady Sphinx pointed at Asna and Lilith, and then disclosed, what if the universe's consciousness has extracted those moral principles from himself and turned them into laws, knowing that they are key for its rebirth? Felix and the rest stared at each other in silence, their furrowed eyebrows expressing their turmoiled emotions after listening to Lady Sphinx's theory. As much as they wondered about it, they always arrived at the same conclusion. She has a point. That's right, all of them understood that without the 7 sins laws, Felix's journey would have taken a much different path. A path that would most probably lead him to his damnation since those laws were simply too overpowered. Big Sis is smart as always, you are the closest to the truth. Asna smiled bitterly, but, merely keep watching and you will understand that the truth is more horrific than this. Upon hearing this, everyone gulped a mouthful in dread and watched as Felix unpaused the memory orb. They watched with Lilith as Asna's core brightened within the universe's heart, dimming to an unimaginable degree. It was like the core was on the verge of death. On its surface, only a couple of inscriptions were written, representing creation laws, destruction laws, and lastly, the 7 virtues. But, the universe's heart kept feeding it with celestial energy continuously, and as more time passed on, new inscriptions reappeared on its surface. When Lilith read them, she read them as the lost laws, which were sent away within their own cores. Does this mean the Unigen's origin is this heart? Lilith wondered with thinned pupils. All the new information she was receiving was too much even for her. But, her assumption was met with a unanimous agreement from Felix and the rest of the tenants. The Unigen's cores were all part of Asna's celestial heart. Candace held her dizzy head. I am starting to lose it. Wasn't the universe's heart responsible for their birth? I know what happened. Eris replied calmly. The universe's heart has extracted the laws from Asna's core and placed them within cores before sending them away for their awakening. That's why there is no creation or destruction Unigen. The universe's heart hasn't extracted them with the rest. My thoughts exactly. Apollo added with an astonished tone. Asna's core is called the origin of laws by the prophecy tablet itself. Now, it makes sense that the naming was actually literal. But wait. How can the universe's heart help with the Unigen's rebirth without Asna's existence? I believe the universe's heart has extracted those laws for itself, leaving Asna's core to recover them through time. Felix interjected, since it is the one creating the cores, it no longer needs Asna to revive dead Unigens. This makes a lot of sense. Lord Marduk mentioned, I believe this is probably the reason Asna's consciousness came to life much later than the rest of the Unigens. Her core needed to recover all of the lost laws before the implanted consciousness of the 7 virtues can come to life. The tenants nodded in understanding. They comprehended that after a Unigen was born, they never awaken their entire powers or control at once. Hence, the awakening stage came later on. For the others, the awakening stage had happened while they were still in their first years, which didn't really change their lives drastically. Lilith was in the same boat as she was born with the powers of void laws, and the 7 sins laws came later after her awakening. This was a known knowledge for all Unigens. Nemo's situation was different since his entire existence was based on a wish, and while he followed the same steps as Unigens, it was more or less to fool Felix and the others into believing that he was Lilith's replacement by the universe. But, in Asna's case, her consciousness might be based on the 7 virtues, but those laws were locked up and she had no idea about them. That's because Unigens figured out their entire laws only after their awakening, which was merely a process of absorbing enough energy to make the final push. Since the 3 rulers had banished and made it impossible for Asna to awaken, fearing for the worst, she was left and everyone else to believe that her consciousness came from the celestial heart instead of the 7 virtues laws. This was the reason Lilith and Asna could potentially control each other's cores even with 2 different souls as long as they were given time to adapt to it. It was also probably the best explanation for why the 7 sins laws weren't resisted by her immunities, since the universe considered her as their owner too. The connection between their laws was merely too strong. This is all so messy and twisted, and yet, it doesn't seem like we even have gotten to the scary part. Hormungandr sighed as he watched Felix unpause the vision, understanding that the worst had yet to come. Chapter 1892 Lilith's Memories 4. The cosmic vision paused for a moment and then immediately accelerated, causing the next scenes before them to blur, moving at a dizzying speed. Stars blinked into existence, galaxies manifested, and entire worlds were born and died in seconds. The universe's consciousness was gone, leaving behind just the universe's heart, becoming smaller and smaller until it resembled a blinding white dot. Soon enough, a sea of celestial energy surrounded it. Eventually, the vision slowed, focusing on a particular moment in time, the gathering of the 3 rulers and the Unigens near the universe's heart. We weren't shown how their consciousness came to life, but it seems like the universe's heart has attracted them all. Felix shared, his eyes affixed on the gathering. The vision didn't show them talking to each other or such, it accelerated the time again until it started displaying the Unigens and the 3 rulers fighting each other once in a while for celestial energy. Those fights resulted in injuries, but nothing too serious. Everyone watching could see that those fights were more or less for entertainment purposes, as everyone was bored immensely in such an empty void. But then, the vision halted at a crucial moment in the history of the universe, the birth of the prophecy tablet. Out of nowhere, the universe's heart flashed with a blinding light, and when it died out, the three rulers and the watchers were startled at the sight of a massive divine tablet, hovering high above their heads. "What's this?" Medusa murmured in a daze as she examined the shimmering tablet. "There are some letters and pictures on it." Amonare narrowed his eyes. "Why do those letters seem to be written from a language combining our three celestial languages?" The first ruler gazed at the letters for a moment before reading them out loud. "In the dawn of a new age, when the stars align and the cosmic tides turn, a kingdom shall rise from the union of might and wisdom. The three who govern the fabric of existence shall join hands with the Unigens, the keepers of the primordial laws. Together, they shall forge a realm beyond time, the starting line of life." After reading it, the three rulers glanced at each other for a few seconds before lifting their heads, and gazing at a hole in the shape of a portal, leading to nothingness. "The universe's heart." Medusa murmured the name written underneath the hole and then switched her vision to the real universe's heart next to them. By now, none of them knew that the small dot next to them was the universe's heart, but when they read its name, it just seemed right. "Is there really another side inside this dot as we predicted?" Amonare's eyes brightened up. "Nov. L. B //JNN. Seems like it." The first ruler said calmly, "Our birth source can only be explained by it. Now, it even threw a tablet at us. There is something inside, something behind it, and we must find out." "What are you saying?" Medusa frowned. "We follow this tablet's peculiar instructions." "Why not? We have already tried everything else to no avail." The first ruler nodded. "We have nothing to lose and everything to gain." "I agree." Amonare said coldly, "I have no interest in being trapped in this dimensional prison forever." By now, the three rulers had already realized that they were trapped inside the future Eternal Kingdom's borders, which were nothing but a unique dimension under the universe's heart creation. They were quite desperate to leave it, since there was literally nothing to be done here besides gazing into the void and sometimes battling the Unigens as a change of routine. Since their options were slim to none, Medusa ended up shrugging her shoulders and agreeing with the proposal too. With that, the three rulers had made their decision to follow the first instruction of many more to come. If only they knew their entire purpose in life would be to fulfill a prophecy of their damnation, would they still do it again? Eris smiled in derision. "This is really the first step of the entire universe's history." Thor remarked, "What would have happened if they ignored the tablet? Would we still exist?" "Most likely not." Fenrir shook his head. "The tablet crafted them create us. Without it, they wouldn't have bothered to waste even a drop of celestial energy on us. Without the primogenitors, the universe wouldn't have been this populated and the elemental manipulations wouldn't be as widespread. While humans might still be born, they won't have been able to create their bloodline cultivation system without the beasts." Hormungandr added with a faint chuckle, "If Felix was born, he would have been just a rich commoner." "You are underestimating the humans' adaptability." Felix smiled, "I am sure we would have come up with something new to ensure our survival. That's how humans are. It's near impossible to get rid of us." Felix said it with his whole chest, knowing damn well that the human race was born to stay. With or without a cultivation system, they would always find a way to establish themselves. However, his life would have been indeed different. Soon, the vision initiated accelerating again, skipping the creation of the Eternal Kingdom, and many other smaller scenes, including the mission to retrieve the Stone of Reality. However, instead of showing Lilith touching the Stone of Reality, the vision showed her leaving with the squad after she saw them failing horribly. Lilith and the rest were surprised by this, making them understand that the stone was about to show them a different future. As expected, the vision persisted playing, showing them how the rulers paused the efforts to retrieve the Stone of Reality and left the Unigens to carry on with their lives. Lilith returned to her palace and persisted antagonizing the Unigens for the next billions of years until she got banished by a majority vote. Then, she remained slumbering in the Void Realm while the three rulers persisted following the instructions of the tablet, starting with the birth of the primogenitors. Felix and the primogenitors observed with their own eyes how the first ruler pointed his fingers toward spiritual mirrors, showing many creatures of all sizes and shapes. "That's me," Lord Loki murmured as he eyed a chameleon camouflaged on a tree, bidding its time to prey on a flying bug. "There I am." Hormungandr smiled bitterly, his eyes affixed on a little green snake with purplish scales, slithering on a grass field, oblivious to what was about to come. Rumble! Rumble! The first ruler unleashed divine lightning bolts on each of those creatures, blessing them with part of his powers, intelligence, and strength. It was like a divine blessing, and the tenants could do nothing but keep their eyes attached to their origin, having no idea how to process their emotions. To see themselves as nothing but dumb creatures following pure instincts crafted them realize that they were indeed blessed. There were many creatures of the same species as them just nearby, which meant, that if they weren't chosen by the three rulers, their lives would have amounted to nothing. Triple release today to make up for yesterday. I am so sorry, but I am still dealing with the aftermath of my father's medical situation, papers, hospital, insurance, and all of that BS. Chapter 1893 Lilith's Memories. V. To know now that our birth purpose was to help little Felix reclaim the universe's throne, I feel blessed to have been given this opportunity. Thor smiled, the depression from living for so long with no purpose had long been cured. I can't see it any differently. Fenrir added with a cold tone, still, those three F***ers have to die. Although they were watching the three rulers give birth to them, the primogenitors still didn't feel an ounce of belonging. They knew that it was nothing but a business transaction, and without the tablet, they wouldn't have seen the day of the light. Thus, if they were going to show appreciation, it would be to the creator of the prophecy of the tablet, which they believed to be the universe's consciousness. After the lightning strikes were concluded, Medusa and Amonare decided to share their blessing too. But, they didn't bestow it to all primogenitors. They chose Lady Yggdrasil and Cyclope blindly and bestowed their celestial language on them. They did it only because the tablet had mentioned it, though, it didn't specify which target. In other words, oh man, they did it randomly? I thought I was chosen or special than the others. Cyclope let out a long exhale in vexation. Makes more sense. Lady Yggdrasil merely chuckled softly, unbothered. If they were picked by the tablet, I would have gotten all three celestial languages. Felix smiled, since it didn't and I still made it all the way here, it's clear that having all three of them wasn't necessary. It's kinda creepy when you think about it. Lord Shiva said expressionlessly, it means the creator of the tablet knows every little detail about the past, present, and future of the universe. He is putting only the necessary instructions to guide your life into this exact moment. It's about to get a whole lot creepier, Asna mumbled. Felix and the rest narrowed their eyes as they continued watching time fly in the vision. After the primogenitors were born, some worked on creating clans, empires, and universal domination, while some isolated themselves. It kept going like this until the primogenitors' era ended, when the majority of them entered Loki's illusion world for hundreds of millions of years. Their sudden disappearance had created a drastic shift in the universe as new powerful races emerged unrelated to them by bloodline: dragons, witches, elves, dwarves, metal race, and more. The birth of those races had kicked off the beginning of the Dark Ages as the domination of the primogenitors' empires fell with their disappearance. Nov. L. B/JNN. Soon, the vision changed the perspective to the Eternal Kingdom, showing the birth of Asna and her short childhood in the realm before getting sent to the imprisonment grounds. What do we have here? Lilith seemed curious about this, but she continued watching the brutal wars during the Dark Ages, birthing the UVR and the SG Alliance. While the forebears slumbered or remained isolated, the SG Alliance emerged, marking the dawn of a new era that brought all races closer to one another than ever before. During the heights of the SG Alliance, the vision zoomed in from one galaxy to another until it arrived at the Milky Way. Then, it kept zooming in until the blue gem Earth came into view. Under the dazed eyes of the viewers, the vision stopped zooming after reaching a hospital bed, showing a gorgeous woman with golden hair and blue eyes giving birth. A stunning stoic man was standing next to her and holding her hand while grandfather Robert was watching from a glass window. "Mom, Dad, Grandpa," Felix murmured, his stare turning softer and relaxed like he was back to his childhood again. After great difficulty, Felix's mother finally pushed little Felix out and with a gentle slap on his buttocks, his high-pitched cries filled the room. Before anyone could react, the vision accelerated again, flying past Felix's childhood, showing everything from his parents' death in a helicopter crash, to him bullying his cousins, the Alexander Kingdom visiting Earth, and finally, to how he joined a bloodline clan, participated in the Ruins mission. The vision slowed down only when he met with Isna and had their souls merged up before he exploded it and Cronus came to the rescue. Wait a second, if Isna's consciousness was based on the 7 virtues, then how come your souls merged up? Candace tilted her head in confusion after being reminded of this. Felix paused the vision as he answered with a faint smile, whether Isna was the consciousness of the celestial core or the 7 virtues, if my soul was related to the universe's consciousness as we assumed, then both will work in my favor. He is right, if the 7 virtues weren't laws originally, then their connection to the universe's consciousness was much higher. Lady Sphinx nodded. There is no ifs, I am quite sure they weren't supposed to be laws. Apollo mentioned, the 7 virtues and 7 sins are the only laws without elements, and the 3 rulers control over them. Indeed. Eris nodded in agreement. I see. Candace raised an eyebrow in surprise. She didn't think that the 3 rulers had no control over those 14 laws. But, it was truly the only evidence needed to support this theory. Felix unpaused the vision and his second chance in life came into play, going almost exactly as the one he lived. But, as he grew older and bypassed Hormungandr, Lady Sphinx, and Thor, his life took a drastic change when he picked Rock's bloodline to integrate next with. Is this the future where Lilith hasn't created the void creatures or Nimmo? Felix was dazed, realizing that they had not seen or heard a single detail about the void creatures. Sure, Lilith was banished to the void realm, but she hadn't created void creatures during the Primogenitors era. It's true. Suddenly, an almost unrecognizable voice resounded in everyone's ears from behind. When they turned around, they saw that it was Lord Kaus. Look who decided to join us at last. Lord Shiva sneered. Lord Kaus ignored him and continued speaking with a solemn tone, based on this vision, Lilith hasn't approached me and charmed me to help her with the void creature's creation. Interesting, without Lilith and Lord Kaus making the void creatures, no connection was established between them. In addition, Lilith had no reason to create Nimmo since she didn't know or care about the existence of Felix. She kept spending her years in deep slumber, not linking herself with Felix one bit. This resulted in Felix choosing another bloodline than Kaus' bloodline since he had no chip to make the trade. Lady Sphinx concluded. One shouldn't forget that the only reason Lord Kaus agreed to the transaction was due to Nimmo's existence and his feud with Lilith. He also believed that Nimmo was Lilith's replacement and he wanted this to happen for his vengeance. Without those two connections, Felix could only dream of Lord Kaus' bloodline. Especially when he was alive and there was no creature with his bloodline relation, not even the void creatures. This also means he has no reason to head to the Alexander Kingdom since he went there to absorb void creatures for Nimmo's hatching, Thor added. When everyone heard this, they turned to watch the vision and noticed that Felix had straight up joined the war between the Anti-Mariana Alliance and the Mariana Empire right from the start. Chapter 1894 Lilith's Memories 6. He truly didn't go to the Alexander Kingdom and slumbered through the entire war, surrounded by millions of void creatures as Nimmo fed on them to hatch. He joined from the start and helped the anti-alliance win the war, but it resulted in grave causalities across both territories. Without Nimmo, there was no Void Army. Without a Void Army, the Mariana Empire gave it everything instead of surrendering the moment the Void Army made an appearance. But still, the war was won. Though, this was nothing but the start of Felix's downfall. Felix and the tenants watched as Felix was gravely limited with Rock's bloodline compared to the Void bloodline. As a starter, there was no Void domain that was capable of killing everyone and anyone in the games instantly. Still, he was able to inherit Rock's spatial splitting blades, allowing him to go quite far in his journey. But, the next choices for his bloodlines kept getting worse and worse due to the lack of greater opportunities. It was like changing the cow's bloodline started a domino effect. Because of this, when he finally arrived at the 6th replacement, he merely broke through the origin realm instead of ascending to a Unigen, even when he went through the same hell in the heavenly plane and watched his beloved getting kidnapped before his own eyes. He wanted to become a Unigen, but there was simply no opportunity to make it happen. Because he helped Lord Hades, he allowed him to return to the matter universe, but that was it. Without Nimmo in the picture, Lord Hades couldn't see Felix's potential to become a Unigen at all. Thus, he didn't even bother to help him enhance his spiritual capacity. He returned the favor by sending him out, and Felix in the vision was happy just to leave, not knowing that he kept missing opportunities to facilitate his chances to ascend to a Unigen. But, he soon found out after roaming the entire matter universe that there was nothing to help a mere mortal become a Unigen, it was simply an impossibility. Thus, Felix gave up and decided to choose the only path left ahead, breaking through the origin realm first. Felix, and the tenants all watched in silence as his alternate version executed his potential, his life, everything, the moment he broke through the origin realm. He succeeded in becoming a 7-headed hydra with each head able to control and breathe flame based on his 7 elements, but, that was it. He had become the strongest entity in the matter universe without any contestant, but his dream of becoming a Unigen was done forever. As expected, the vision accelerated again, showing only a blur before finally stopping at a mountain facing the sunset. On top of it, an old wrinkly man with a white beard sat on it with a big jar of wine in his hand. His wrinkled eyes seemed dead, gazing into the sunset as he drank his wine in silence. The moment he finished it, he looked into the sky, his eyes reflecting defeat and utter hopelessness. "I tried, I really, tried, but, I failed you." With one last gaze at the sky, he murmured, "I failed us." Then, he blew his soul, committing the grandest act of suicide for the strongest being in the matter universe. His soul explosion was so powerful, that it destroyed the entire world he was on. As the vision zoomed out, everyone was stunned to see that it was Earth, but not in its most wonderful state. But, the vision kept zooming out and out, showing that Earth wasn't the only place in shambles. The entire Milky Way was destroyed, and humans as a race went extinct. Yet, it still didn't stop, zooming out and displaying for everyone how the entire SG Alliance collapsed and all surviving races were in barbaric wars, resembling one familiar period: the Dark Ages. The vision didn't explain anything as the moment it zoomed to its limit, it shut down, and then, it played itself from the very start. "What's all of this and why does it have any relation to me?" Lilith frowned in displeasure. She couldn't care less about a mortal's journey no matter how fascinating it was, since it was clear that it had no connection to her. Her real body probably slept through the entire 4 eras. Nov. L. B / JNN. But, it was different for Felix and the others. Felix paused the vision's replay and sat with the others in silence, already starting to connect the dots of what happened or was about to happen. "This was my life without Nimmo, no, without Lilith's interference," Felix uttered as he gazed at Lilith's irritated frozen look. "Indeed, if she hasn't brought Nimmo to life, if she hasn't placed him in your path within the Shurima temple, if she hasn't created Lucifer and made you inherit his evil energy, and most importantly, if she hasn't manipulated you, you would have never ascended to a Unigen." Lady Asna shared with a bitter smile. Everything that she had done was to help you obtain the necessary tools for the ascension, as without them, you would have never fooled the universe into accepting you as the new paragon of sins. Evil energy, her core, the breakthrough to the origin realm, everything needed to be perfect, and it's near impossible for such preparation to happen without her. Elder Kraken shook his head. You simply can't become a Unigen without a Unigen's core and those necessary steps. There was no other Unigen in the universe who would have done the same. No one. Felix and the tenants went silent, realizing that as much of a manipulative C*NT Lilith was, everything she had done was for Felix to avoid that bleak future, a future that he had no clue about. But why didn't she just come clean and tell us what she has in mind? Fenrir held his chin thoughtfully. I doubt there was a need to make herself Felix's enemy when he has already started to trust her during their training. For f***'s sake, she trained him to beat Nemo's alter ego, just in the end to force him into gaining access to Asna and making him realize that Nemo's existence was for this moment. Thor cursed. The rest of the tenants nodded in agreement. They realized that if Lilith told the truth and showed them what she knew, Felix would have taken her in as one of his masters immediately and would have accepted her guidance about everything. Instead, she turned herself into his most hated enemy, someone who didn't just break his trust and betray him, but also played like a fiddle to enter his beloved's heart. He simply could never forget such a disgrace until the day he died, no matter what Lilith did after to redeem herself. That's why even when she helped him plenty, he always considered himself to be using her, waiting for the best moment to ensure her death. In their eyes, this entire dynamic would have been different if she simply told the truth from the start. You should keep watching, the answer is just around the corner. Asna sighed. Chapter 1895 Lilith's Memories 7. Upon hearing this, Felix resumed the vision with a solemn expression. He watched as the vision kept resetting each time it arrived at the moment of his death. It was like the moment he died, the universe lost its anchor and it resetted to the very beginning. Why are you showing me this? Are you asking me to help this cutie survive or what? Lilith asked with an irritated tone. The vision had already been replayed 5 times, each time, there were slight differences, but the ending was always the same. Felix died through suicide after spending his entire life searching for a way up, a way to reach divinity, but to no avail. The moment he broke through the origin realm, he lost his chance forever. Is that what you want? Lilith suddenly raised an eyebrow after noticing that the vision paused for a moment before continuing to play. She took it as a response at last. Why will I do that? Lilith knitted her eyebrows. What do I have to gain from this mess? Abruptly, the vision collapsed after a flash of light and the universe's heart reappeared again. Lilith and the rest turned to look at it, and before they could react, the universe's heart started to glimmer brightly while getting bigger. This, don't tell me! Felix's eyes widened in disbelief, a reaction shared by the rest of the tenants. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Are we about to see what's on the other side at last? Apollo said while clapping his hands eagerly. My heart is beating so fast, what if there is nothing? What if there was something? I can't think. Candace released a low scream in excitement and dread. Regardless of their reactions, everyone's eyes were affixed to the expanding universe's heart. After it grew to a decent size, the light began to die out, leaving behind a circular rippling mirror. Hey? There is nothing. Felix and the others' excitement soon turned to confusion after seeing that there was nothing behind the universe's heart. It was a literal black screen, yet, Lilith's reaction said otherwise. How extraordinary! She was able to murmur only those words before the universe's heart sealed shut, returning as a mere dot. What's going on here? Felix frowned as he paused the vision. Did we see the same thing? Most likely not. Asna said, I think she has altered her memories. Why would she do that? Thor and the rest of the tenants were just as bewildered. Knowing that he wouldn't receive his answer like this, Felix resumed the memory. So, that's how it is. Lilith smiled, if I help this cutie fulfill his call, I get access to the other side. With those many resets, Lilith was easily able to understand that Felix's goal was the death of the three rulers and rescuing his beloved, Asna. Why not? I am dying of boredom either way. Without double-checking anything, Lilith showed an enthusiastic grin as she watched the new vision, studying it fully this time. Then, she attempted to manipulate it by showing up before Felix and enslaving him with her lust mark while he was still young. However, the moment she did this, Felix lost his autonomy. Under the taken-back looks of the viewers, the cycle ended right there and then, before starting again from the very beginning. Interesting, I can't control him or it is considered a failure, but, Lilith held her chin thoughtfully, what does this reset imply? What does she mean? Nemo asked with a confused tone. Felix and the tenants had serious expressions as he answered, she is wondering if this reset is related to the vision, or the real universe. Wait, you are considering that the entire universe might reset every time your journey is finished? Nemo raised an eyebrow in surprise. It's indeed crazy to think about it, but there is a chance that the universe does reset each time Felix's voyage is halted. Asna clarified with a solemn tone, since he is believed to be the universe's consciousness on a path of rebirth, it's not far-fetched for him to be considered as the anchor of the universe. Isn't that a bit too much? We are talking about a universe's reset, only the universe's consciousness can. Apollo scratched his cheek sheepishly, forget it, I can totally see him installing such a countermeasure. If it was anyone else, the tenants would have never bothered to waste their time on such a crazy theory. But, this was related to the universe's consciousness, the true ruler of all. He was the only one capable of pulling such a crazy concept and no one could do anything about it. Soon, Felix and the tenants watched as Lilith tried the easiest options to help Felix reach his goal. She even arranged a situation where she saved him to gain his trust and then told him about everything she knew and what he needed to do. But, the moment she did this, the universe came to a grinding halt and the cycle began a new one. Interesting, I need to help him without him losing control or knowing about the truth. Lilith smirked at the challenge, this is going to be fun. Felix and the rest of the tenants were left to watch a true manipulative mastermind in action, leaving them with widened jaws at how she came up with a plan that altered the entire future of the universe for Felix's sake. It took plenty of trial or error, but eventually, she locked on a single plan that seemed to have the highest chance of success. It was exactly the plan she used on Felix. Felix moved past the memories of the vision, wanting to see Lilith in action personally. Now, the memory orb showed Lilith returning from the depth of the stone of reality's miasma with the same expression she entered with. You had enough of wasting our time. Uranus sneered as he turned around, let's get the hell out already. Good thing you didn't abuse your laws at least. Eris nodded at Lilith. No one seemed to suspect a thing like Lilith was gone for a mere couple of seconds. In reality, she was inside the vision for centuries if not more, to perfect her plan. While she had emerged as a different being entirely, no one was able to pick up on the changes. It was fun to try, I was very close to touching the stone, Lilith replied lazily as she followed them. Oh? I wonder what would have happened if you did touch it. Eris wondered out loud. Probably instant death. Uranus scoffed with a hint of dread in his eyes, quite terrified by the stone of reality. Ares kept his silence, unbothered by the whole situation. Some time later, the four upper Unigens escaped the echoing tower and returned to the Eternal Kingdom, updating the three rulers on the results. After some back and forth, they were excused and Lilith returned to her palace. The only difference between this scene in the vision and the real world was a tint of craziness buried behind Lilith. What's going to get me banished, but raise no suspicion? She wondered with a widened grin as her eyes reflected the gate to the celestial dimensional pocket. Some wonderful and crazy ideas were roaming her mind. Chapter 1896 Lilith's Memories 8. For the next couple of hours, Felix and the tenants watched how Lilith's life took a drastic turn. Starting with enforcing an earlier banishment by attempting to steal the universe's heart. Since she was already antagonizing most of the Unigens, the majority voted to get her kicked out, finally done with her shenanigans. After she was banished, Lilith slumbered for a short while to avoid any eyes on her. Then, she kicked off her plan by wishing for Nemo's birth. Since Nemo was considered an anomaly, the wish was just too expensive. This caused her to get punished heavily by the universe. Lilith didn't seem to care as she placed Nemo's egg at the heart of the Void Realm and she returned to her slumber. Felix fast-forwarded the memories until Lilith woke up to find herself in the primogenitor's era. She straightway kicked off the second part of the plan. She located Lord Koaz and charmed him with her words, manipulating him emotionally to give her everything she wanted to create the Void Creatures race. With his help, Lilith's punishment was reduced immensely as she didn't use the universe's assistance for everything. After she was done, she threw him away like disposable garbage. Everyone turned to look at Lord Koaz, feeling somewhat sorry for him. Being treated in that manner was terrible on its own, but discovering later that his misfortune ended up benefiting the very man he had bet on to bring him justice, was a different story. Don't feel bad for me. We are all puppets, dancing under the hands of the universe consciousness. Lord Koaz said expressionlessly one last time before retreating from the gathering, having no interest in watching the rest. The tenants' expressions immediately turned solemn, understanding none of them truly possessed free will. While Lord Koaz was manipulated a bit more directly, their entire existence came to be for the sake of helping the universe's consciousness reborn through Felix. As much as they considered this a noble purpose due to their tight relationship with Felix, it didn't change the fact that their lives were attached to strings from birth. Don't think too much about it. Eris said calmly, even the three rulers are under the same puppet master. You should feel glad that we are on his side. In her eyes, if everyone was under the same curse, it was much better to be on the side of the caster. The tenants seemed to agree with her as everyone dropped those depressing thoughts and returned to Lilith's memories. They witnessed the emergence of the Void Creatures, and the universe's history started to become familiar to them, the same civilizations fell and the same ones rose in their place. Felix quickly skipped to the Dark Ages era and watched as Lilith started a new project on the other side of the Great Nothingness, the birth of the demon race. She extended her palm forward and started to channel the darkest and most malevolent energy within her until it condensed into a crimson orb. This was her evil energy born from the Seven Sins laws. As an energy, it had no consciousness and Lilith knew that it would take forever for it to gain it on its own. Thus, she accelerated the process by using a wish, sacrificing everything she prepared as a price. Rise, Lucifer, born of my soul's night, bearer of chaos, and bane of the light. With the final word, the crimson orb started to take shape into a tall and regal figure. His presence exuded a raw dark charisma while his entire aura screamed of wickedness. As his features developed, his appearance started to resemble Felix more and more until eventually, he was more or less his very twin. Only now did Felix and the tenants have their assumption confirmed about Lucifer's identical appearance to Felix being a result of Lilith's doing. She had been staring at him for centuries while perfecting her plan. Knowing her, she must have definitely done this to mess with you. Apollo chuckled. Most likely. Felix's eyelids twitched. Meanwhile, Lucifer opened his eyes for the first time just to see Lilith's breathtaking beauty covering his line of sight. At first sight, he felt a kind of connection to her like no other, making him lower his head and speak his first ever word. Mother. Lilith observed him with detached indifference, her eyes cold and calculating. She had crafted him to be the perfect instrument for her plans. But as she looked at him, she felt no attachment, no maternal instinct. To her, Lucifer was nothing more than a means to an end, a tool in her grand scheme. But, she had no interest in telling him this. Lucifer, my greatest creation, she spoke, her voice carrying a bit of warmth, I brought you to this life for a simple reason, you must grow strong enough to dominate the universe and reclaim the throne. My purpose is to own the universe. Lucifer murmured to himself as he gazed into the distance. Although he was recently born, Lilith made sure to feed him with some basic information as she had no interest in raising a clueless child. The only way to achieve your grand purpose is to merge with this entity and consume his powers. Lilith continued her brainwashing by showing Lucifer a spiritual picture of Felix from the future. When Lucifer saw how he looked like Felix, he felt his chest thumping loudly, like it was calling him to merge with Felix as fast as possible. Lead me to him, Mother. I won't fail you. Lucifer uttered with a cold resolve. Settle down, your destiny won't arrive until 20 million years from now. Lilith said, her voice growing fainter, this should give you more than enough time to prepare for your ascension. Before Lucifer could react, Lilith added one last time before her body disappeared into the ether, I am going to slumber for a while, you know what to do. Mother, Lucifer swallowed his words and promised while lowering his head, sleep well mother, I have everything covered. Lilith had indeed gone to sleep to recover from the punishment of bringing Lucifer to life. Although she prepared the price, it was still not enough for such a big wish that was capable of altering the entire history of the universe. Meanwhile, Felix and the rest of the tenants were surprised to see that the memories had switched from Lilith's eyes to Lucifer's eyes. She probably obtained all of his memories after waking up. Lady Sphinx said. Everyone nodded in agreement and continued watching as Lucifer navigated his new life on the other side of the universe. If there was one word that could describe it, it would definitely be demonic. Lucifer had brought hell on the entire population of the other side, demonizing anything that breathed. He had only one goal in mind, to create an army of demons to help him with his universe's domination. When he realized that his speed was slow, he created the other 6 demonic princes, giving them free will, unlike the rest of the demons. Then, he retracted back to darkness and left them to fight amongst each other to obtain more territories until the other side became a demon-infested realm. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. So many lives lost, so many lives tortured, all for the sake of my ascension. Felix spoke under his breath with an expressionless look. He had his emotions turned off as he watched the whole demonic massacre being carried out, knowing that if he didn't do it, he would be beyond disturbed. He knew that nothing good would come up from reacting to those scenes, knowing that there was nothing he could do for them. All he could do was make sure that such a massacre would never be carried out under his presence. He was already doing it by protecting the entire SG Alliance from the 3 rulers. It's not for your ascension, it's for the universe's consciousness rebirth, everything is for that goal. Eris said calmly. Goal hui. Felix narrowed his eyes coldly, I can't wait to find out about his reasoning. Chapter 1897 Lilith's Memories 9. After the demons took over the other side, years went by and the 2 sides remained separated, having no clue about their existence. Felix fast-forwarded the memories until Lilith opened her eyes again. She did so the moment Felix was born. She just kept following his journey without interfering, waiting for the perfect time. It arrived at last when Felix decided to search the Shurima temple for treasures. This time, everyone watched as Lilith opened a void portal and placed Nemo's egg above the guardian's palm before disappearing. Then, she watched him almost lose his life if it wasn't for the Devourer's heart acting as a secondary heart after half of his body got deleted by the beam. Even then, she refrained from interjecting. Too much meddling will do more harm than not, she said as she chewed gum with a careless look. But, she still did something that none of them had expected. She blinked to the deserted galaxy, where Cronus was known to reside. Then, she approached the black hole and spoke with a playful smile, Chrono, it's your favorite girl, how about you let me in? Sigh. A deep sigh resounded from the black hole, making Lilith giggle in amusement before stepping inside the death machine. However, she ended up emerging on the other side in one piece, leaving her to gaze at the frozen timeline with a look of intrigue. Lilith, Cronus rumbled, you know you're wasting your efforts. Lilith focused on Cronus' massive eye above her and said calmly, you know why I'm here, Chrono. I've seen what's on the other side, and I want it. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Cronus' pupil thinned as it locked into her eyes. Then, a deep exhale left his lips. No one wants that, Lilith. Believe me. What lies beyond is a burden, not a prize. Lilith's lips curled into a small knowing smile. Burden or not, I want it. I've seen what it can do, what it can unlock. And you, Chrono, are going to help me get it. Cronus stared at her for a long moment, the weight of countless ages behind his gaze. Very well. But remember, Lilith, once you cross that threshold, there's no turning back. Lilith winked at him. I'm counting on it. Cronus shook his giant eye and then created a space-time tear. In an instant, both of them were pulled into the tear, leaving behind the desolate wasteland and emerging into another frozen timeline. When Lilith opened her eyes, she found herself standing above the ceiling hall on the imprisonment grounds. This. Felix and the rest of the tenants were left stunned as they watched Lilith summon a golden earring from thin air. Then, she extended dark tentacles to wrap around the ceiling hall. With a single tug, the ceiling hall was absorbed into the golden sun earring. Lilith examined the earring with satisfaction, its weight a comforting presence in her palm. She fastened it to her ear, feeling the ancient power settle into place, now under her control. She turned to Cronus, who watched her with a mixture of concern and resignation. You'll regret this, Cronus said quietly, his voice filled with a somber warning. The price is higher than you think. Lilith met his gaze with a cold smile. Perhaps. But that's a risk I'm willing to take. Thank you for your help, Chrono. With that, she turned and vanished into the ether, leaving Cronus alone in the frozen timeline once more. Felix paused the memories immediately, feeling like his brain was about to explode. I had a feeling that Lilith might have had a hand in getting me the ceiling hall for Nemo's alter ego, but I never expected her to obtain it this way. Felix expressed, still trying to make sense of what he had witnessed. I am just as confused. Thor knitted his eyebrows. How can she obtain another ceiling hall from a different timeline? Isn't everything changeable besides the only constants, like unigens and natural realms? True, if Asna was sealed in one timeline, there wouldn't be copies of her in other timelines, which means no ceiling halls too. Candace tilted her head, is my understanding correct? Your understanding is correct if you considered the other timelines as a standalone with their own people and set of rules. Eris clarified calmly, but, it isn't. Those timelines are nothing but copies of the main universe frozen in different durations from the beginning of time to its end. Any changes occurring in the main universe, which is considered as the main timeline, will affect the rest of the timelines, changing everything while keeping it frozen. I still don't understand. Candace smiled wryly. In simpler terms, when Cronus has sent Asna and Felix to a different frozen timeline 20 years in the past, he has awakened it as the new main timeline. Eris explained, as the new main timeline, all other frozen timelines were affected based on the degree of the temporal manipulation. Since it was a mere 20 years, the past remained somewhat the same, but the changes occurring in the future were drastic enough, that the entire history was altered. This makes me believe that Cronus has tapped into a personal frozen timeline outside of the universe's rules. Otherwise, it shouldn't be possible to find a perfect ceiling hall since Asna was locked in it while she was in the Eternal Kingdom. This meant the moment she disappeared, all the ceiling halls in other frozen timelines should be gone too. That makes most sense. Lady Sphinx was the first to nod in understanding. That's why Lilith has gone to him, knowing that he is the only one with a spare ceiling hall. Lord Marduk added. The real question should be why did Cronus decide to help her so easily and without any payment? Felix knitted his eyebrows. Knowing that all of Cronus' moves were calculated and had an end goal drove Felix to believe that he was helping him through Lilith. After all, it was clear that he was the only one knowing the full truth about their universe. "It's like he is trying to help you reach the truth on your own," Asna said. "He has been helping you from the shadows, and when you directly asked him for it, he rejected it." "I think so too." Felix nodded. Now that Lilith had the sealing hall, it didn't take a genius to know what her next move was. As expected, Lilith took off towards Four-Mother Siamese's galaxy, seeking a meeting with no one but Lord Zervan. The only person who could help her with her plan without jeopardizing anything. While Lord Zervan was a mere primogenitor, he was still the primogenitor of time. Thus, the moment Lilith emerged from a portal in front of his cozy cottage, he didn't seem surprised one bit. "I have been expecting you, Madam Lilith," he greeted as he sat on a table with 2 cups of tea already poured. Lilith didn't bother taking his offer at the table. She threw the golden sun earrings on the table and said calmly, "You know what to do with it." Then, she turned around and left before Four-Mother Siamese could interfere. "My lord, what was that?" Four-Mother Siamese's voice resounded in the cottage. "My small and humble role." Lord Zervan smiled bitterly as he played with the earring in his hand, his pupils reflecting a vision. A vision showing Felix coming to this very cottage to collect this earring. Chapter 1898 Lilith's Memories. X. After Lilith left, she took away the vision with her, making it impossible for Felix and the others to see what happened next at the cottage. It makes sense for the earring to have a mark of my soul, since Lilith could easily obtain it through a wish or from her future intel. Felix held his chin thoughtfully, but why choose Lord Zervan for the task? Also, why does it seem like Lord Zervan knows more about the future than the 3 rulers? Isn't he blocked by the veil just like the rest of us? When Felix first received the earrings, he didn't know about many things, making him assume that the 3 rulers had a hand in this. Even the earrings' origin must be related to Hephaestus, as he was the only forger qualified to craft such divine spatial jewelry capable of holding the sealing hall. The moment he was introduced to the world of Unigens, many of his previous questions could be easily answered. But now, he was confused by different ones. She must have chosen him because she knows he can see the future fully without similar consequences. Eris said calmly, "I believe the veil isn't there to block everyone from peering through it and seeing how the future is, but just a selected few. Zervan must have not been picked, since anything he has seen can't be shared, or he will instantly forget it the moment he tries to do it." Lady Sphinx expressed. "That's true, he is cursed to see the future, but not share it with anyone." Thor frowned, but, based on his reaction, I don't think he is seeing as far as Cronus. Otherwise, his reaction shouldn't be as mild. The tenants nodded in agreement, knowing that it was impossible for Lord Zervan to be more composed than Cronus. If the truth was shocking and terrifying enough to traumatize Cronus into erasing his memories periodically, then it should have ruined Lord Zervan. In other words, he had information about the future, but he must have no clue what awaited them on the other side of the universe's heart. This is probably the reason the rulers never bothered him. Fenrir said, "They know that he has no clue about the other side, and extracting information from him is useless since everything he was seeing will be blocked for them." Everyone agreed, knowing that Lord Zervan was merely wielding a fraction of the 3 rulers' powers. If he can see that far into the future, this means that he must have brought the entire galaxy into life with all elementals in it for your sake. Lord Marduk addressed, "We all thought it was based on an experiment, but it's useless to experiment on something you already know the answer for." It's true, the elemental galaxy has helped Felix immensely, both in his cultivation due to the time difference and most importantly, with his fight against Nemo's alter ego. Candace raised an eyebrow in surprise. Four-Mother Siamese can be said to be the only being in the matter universe who had what it took to help out with Nemo's alter ego. When the tenants recalled how everything went down, even when Felix failed to defeat Nemo's alter ego with Four-Mother Siamese's help, it still gave him the confidence needed to commit to such a suicidal battle. After all, he was at a deity level attempting to fight off a Unigen, although he was weakened. I will get my answers when I pay him a visit. Felix said calmly, we still owe Mother Siamese a favor for her help. Felix swiftly unpaused the memories and watched as the years kept going by and Lilith's eyes never left him, watching every single game of his and every war he took. Even when Felix got smitten by the three rulers and sent to the spirit realm, she didn't help him out. She was certain that Felix would emerge in one piece from the spirit realm as he always pulled it off in the vision. Only this time, she wished for one thing. Hadi, don't disappoint me now, my cutie has enough clues to help you see beyond his mortally limits. Lilith murmured, show him the way, lead him to me. As the tenants heard her thoughts, shivers coursed down their spines at such a freakish manipulation. Even Lord Hades had no idea that he was part of Liltia's plan. As expected, Lord Hades ended up helping Felix with his ascension, telling him the exact steps he had to follow to ensure it. From devouring Lucifer and becoming the new personification of evil to fighting off against Nemo's alter ego for the sake of obtaining his core and ascending during the Origin Realm breakthrough. Everything was perfectly planned, making everyone appreciate Lord Hades' intelligence and foresight. Only now did they understand that Lord Hades was a mere puppet to Lilith's scheme. In fact, Lord Hades always knew that Lilith was up to something after picking up on those details, but he didn't manage to figure it out. n/o/vel/b//in.c//om. Soon, the scene jumped to when Felix was fighting against Nemo's alter ego while Lilith was watching in his mind with the rest of the tenants. This time, they could read her thoughts during this brutal and impossible battle. He will probably hate me forever for this, but it's the only way to reach the other side without compromising the plan. Lilith thought to herself with a faint smile as she watched him getting beat up like crazy. Me and Asna are born out of the same core, which makes us twin sisters. While her new home is 1,000 times better than mine, if I manage to get into it and spend enough time, I might be able to fool her core once. Lilith pondered, it might work or not, but it's the only defensive measure I will have to ensure my stay. Lilith! Please help him! Suddenly, the tenant's cries to save Felix from Nemo's alter ego after landing in the Void Realm, echoed thunderously in her mind. The situation outside wasn't looking good for Felix in the slightest, and if no one were to intervene, this would be the end of him. He was already on the verge of losing consciousness before Asna's core had the time to finish the devouring process. Looks like it's time. Lilith smiled inwardly, but externally, she paid a visit to Felix at the depth of his subconsciousness. Felix and the others watched as she twisted his arm to give her access to Asna's core. She left him with no choice as she made it clear that if he refused her, she would kill him and take Asna's core anyway. Though, she promised to hand it to the three rulers, which was the only thing Felix could never agree on. Thus, Felix agreed eventually while his heart burned with hatred and anger at Lilith's betrayal. If only he knows how deep the rabbit hole goes, will he still react like this? Lilith chuckled inwardly as she watched Felix vow to end her life for this. When she said this, everyone turned to look at Felix, wanting to know if his feelings changed after watching Lilith's memories and understanding her motives. She had indeed manipulated him, but at the same time, if she hadn't, his life would have ended on top of a mountain by suicide. That future repeated itself so many times, that it became clear to Felix that his fate had to be changed manually for him to continue his growth. Lilith made herself into the boogeyman to help him with it. While her ways were demonic and merciless, and should be questioned by anyone with morals, if she didn't go that far, it might not have been enough to change Felix's fate this drastically. It's still early, Felix replied emotionlessly, knowing that Lilith's death was still an enigma. If he wasn't certain that Lilith's memories were real, he would already assume that she was showing him all of this to change his perspective of her, another form of manipulation. But, she could never alter her memories that drastically before two celestials without them spotting it immediately. After Lilith guaranteed her stay in Asna's core, Felix went on to ascend into a Unigen at least, escaping from that ominous ending in the vision. From here on, Lilith's information from the vision should have been over, yet, she did something none of them would have expected. After Felix lost his consciousness, Lilith was still in control of her laws and powers. Instead of getting rid of Nemo's alter ego, she sent him to the quantum realm for one last mission. Don't return until you map out the entire echoing tower, she ordered calmly. Chapter 1899 Lilith's Memories 11. End. Nemo's alter ego listened to her order instantly, disappearing towards the quantum realm. It took him no time to find the echoing tower, but entering it was a different story. He was forced to wait many years before the entrance opened up, but due to the massive time difference between the realms, it changed nothing. After he went inside, the first thing that came before him was the massive dreadful eye on the sky, making the tenants realize that the tower's topmost floor was the 100th. No wonder the map was found on this floor, the upper ones didn't exist during the mapping, Thor remarked. I am more confused about Lilith's reasoning for doing this. Candace wondered, does her future information go as far as Felix entering the tower? Or did she just take a guess? It must be an educated guess. Felix knitted his eyebrows. She understood that there would come a time when I might enter the echoing tower to retrieve the stone of reality. She wanted to help you one last time before she loses her powers, Thor added as he watched Nemo's alter ego map out the tower, floor by floor. He used his laws whenever needed to survive the floor's peculiar mechanism. Since the 7 sins laws worked perfectly in the tower, he found not much struggle even when he was all alone. After a decent period and many tough moments, Nemo's alter ego managed to map out the tower and detail every floor's mechanism before writing them all on a giant monolith. Returning to the 100th floor, he strode purposefully to the stone of reality on the first floor and came to a halt directly in front of the miasma cloud. Lilith swiftly retook control and gazed at the stone of reality with a hint of intrigue, wondering if it would show her a new vision. However, the moment she took a step inside the miasma, she came to a shocking discovery. The stone of reality was rejecting her advances. That's it. Lilith raised an eyebrow. Is my role finished? Silence. The stone of reality refused to let her get any closer, and if she were to force it, she knew that her fate would be similar to Uranus. Thus, she shrugged her shoulders and turned around, leaving one last statement, I have done my part, it's on him now. Lilith sent Nemo's alter ego to the 100th floor and made him place the giant monolith somewhere visible. Then, it erased his existence once and for all. Felix paused the memories. Her impact on your life can be said to be monumental. To even predict your next move and prepare ahead to help you out, she really pulled all stops to ensure reaching the other side. Elder Kraken said with a wry smile. While she did all of this for her own selfish reasons, it still doesn't change the fact that your life would have been drastically different without her interference. Lady Sphinx said. The tenants nodded in agreement. If it's just for selfish reasons, why did she have to sacrifice herself at the end for Mom's sake? Nemo asked in confusion. The tenants nodded in agreement. If it's just for selfish reasons, why did she have to sacrifice herself at the end for Mom's sake? Nemo asked in confusion. That's what we are going to find out, Felix said with a cold look as he skipped through Lilith's memories until he reached the end. He stopped the moment he exposed the massive snake, biting into Asna's core. This time, they witnessed the conflict from Lilith's perspective. Well, this is an unexpected turn of events. Lilith uttered coldly as he gazed at the snake, realizing that her plan was about to be ruined at its final steps. If the 3 rulers repossessed Asna's soul with her core, it's a game over for me. She had been awaiting Asna's rebirth with great patience, and this wasn't the ending she had hoped for. The worst part? She could see that Felix was somewhat hopeless in this situation as he had no time to take care of the snake before Asna's soul concluded its rebirth. When she saw that he was about to blow Asna's soul again, she shook her head, a good countermeasure, but a little bit too late. Knowing that their fate was sealed, Lilith glanced above, like she was staring directly into Felix's eyes, and showed a faint hopeless smile. All I ever wanted is to see the other side again. Before Felix and the tenants could react, Lilith joined the confrontation and used core flare cleansing. It erased the divine snake, but at the same time, it disintegrated Lilith with it. n/o/vel/b//in.c//om. The memories ended the moment she was dead, the screen turning black, akin to a movie ending abruptly. The tenants were left gazing at the black screen in silence, many thoughts roaming their minds about the whole situation. All of them knew that Lilith was addressing Felix at the end with her thoughts, knowing that after her death, Asna would inherit her memories due to the connection they shared. While she didn't make it direct or beg him outright, it was obvious that she was wishing for him to see the whole picture and help her achieve her dream too, just like she helped him. After a brief silence, Lady Sphinx turned to Felix and asked, "What do you think?" Her ways were questionable, but she still has placed a bet on me, Felix uttered with a strict tone. If he wasn't in complete control of his emotions, he wouldn't have been this calm about it. His mind and heart would have already turned his soul into a battlefield, one thinking rationally and the other emotionally. When it came to rationality, Lilith had shown everyone that every move of hers was in Felix's future benefit even if it made her be perceived as the bad guy. On the other hand, it was nearly impossible to forget what Lilith had put him through as his heart was burning for years to avenge itself. Now, it found out that all of those emotions were for naught. Such a drastic change would be difficult for anyone to accept. But, Felix was a celestial now and his rationally always came first in such decisions, making him understand that his enemies currently, weren't Lilith, but the three rulers. Whether she has done all of this for her selfish reasons or not, the point still stands that I wouldn't be here without her diabolical manipulation. Felix decided calmly, I will revive her when I deal with the three rulers. That's the smartest choice. Thor approved. The rest of the tenants agreed too, knowing that even if Lilith was revived, she would no longer have any power over Felix. After everything that he had seen, he didn't mind allowing Lilith to see the other side one last time. But for now, he had to focus on what was about to come. Asna, the chains will ensnare you in less than 3 seconds. Felix shared calmly, are you ready? I have been ready for more than 20 million years, Asna uttered coldly, her demeanor not matching her holy aura. With a head nod, Felix tapped his finger on her forehead and obtained all the information related to her awakening. He knew that she might not have turned out to be the universe's consciousness replacement as everyone predicted, but the awakening did make her a true celestial after unlocking all the laws in her possession. In other words, she was the only being in the universe with full control over all laws, even the 7 sins, creation and destruction. Thus, her spiritual pressure might be similar to Felix and the three rulers due to them being all at the same rank, but their arsenal was entirely different. That's what Felix came to find out after reading the information, making his lips crack into a cold smirk. With our powers combined, they wouldn't know what hit them. I am counting on it. Asna narrowed her eyes, I have no interest in making the battle last long. Likewise. Felix reached out with his hand and caught Asna's hand. Then, he waited until the last moment before the chains could wrap themselves on her, and teleport to the void realm. The moment they reappeared, similar golden chains manifested out of nowhere and took hold of Felix akin to a hostage. Then, it started to pull him into an emerging golden portal with Asna still in hand. Felix gazed at the portal, then at the universe he was leaving behind, before finally setting his eyes on his beloved. With a faint warm smile, he said, this is our first and last battle, let's show them the monsters they have created with their own hands. First and last battle, hey? Asna smiled back, squeezing his hand, who can tell? It doesn't seem like there is nothing on the other side. I know, but whatever is on there, as long as we are together, me and you, nothing can hurt us. Felix uttered coldly, the three rulers are the first to have a taste. The moment the last word left Felix's lips, their bodies got dragged into the portal, disappearing at once. The portal closed behind them almost immediately, seemingly sparing the mortals of the matter universe from witnessing something their minds couldn't fathom even if they tried. A battle that would define the future of the universe for the next eons to come. Chapter 1900. Peace was never an option. The moment they passed the portal, Felix and Asna stood on a sea of clouds, stretching infinitely in all directions. Their intrusion hadn't gone unnoticed as the moment their feet touched the clouds, the three rulers were alerted. "They are here," Amonare uttered coldly. "Keep it in, let's try the peaceful approach," the first ruler said calmly as he waved his finger. Immediately after, the divine incarnations of the three rulers appeared high above Felix and Asna, parting the sea of clouds like gods about to reveal themselves. "Paragon, Asna, we have long since awaited your arrival." The first ruler welcomed with extended arms. "Do excuse our forceful approach, but you have left us no choice." "Forceful approach?" Felix replied expressionlessly, "You have needlessly massacred tens of millions of lives. Lives of mortals, who knew nothing about our celestial matters. Paragon, you are a celestial now, you should act accordingly." Amonare said coldly, "Mortals' lives are just as meaningless as a drop of water in an ocean." Felix's expression remained indifferent, he had long gone past being affected by anyone's words and this entire conversation in his eyes was meaningless. He knew that the three rulers didn't attack them because they wanted to work things out amicably. After all, Celestials were in complete control over their emotions and they could easily skip over their hatred and anger if needed. As much as Felix and Asna had tortured and annoyed the crap out of them, now that they were Celestials, they felt that the best move to reach the other side was if they worked together. After all, with Felix's ability to deconstruct celestial energy combined with their saved pools from billions of years, they would have enough to brute force the universe's heart. As expected. "We are all Celestials here and it's clear, we seek the same goal." Medusa interjected with a gentle smile, "to find out the truth about our universe and what is hidden on the other side. So, how about we put our differences aside and work together to solve this puzzle? Once we are done, you can carry on with your vengeance, we don't mind." The nerve to suggest a partnership out loud after everything that happened. Ancestral Dragon Immer sneered hatefully. He felt like the three rulers treated everyone and everything as disposable trash. When Felix and Asna were weak, the three rulers did everything to make their lives a living hell. But, the moment they became Celestials, they suddenly garnered their respect to treat them as equals. Asna felt the same. "Only you bastards have a thick face to propose a partnership with us." Asna narrowed her eyes frigidly, "Did you really think there was a 1% chance we would agree?" "Yes, because at the end of the day, aren't we all slaves to this universe and doing whatever it takes to free ourselves?" The first ruler said composedly. The three rulers still had no clue about the universe's consciousness attempting to revive himself through Felix. In other words, they were doing all of this just to escape from this universe, having no idea that their entire existence was nothing but another pawn to the universe's consciousness. As much as Felix wanted to tell them, he knew that they wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing a good reaction. Thus, he didn't bother entertaining their proposal. He sat down cross-legged and manifested the fabric of logic in front of him. Without glancing in the three rulers' direction, Felix said calmly, "Unfortunately, peace was never an option." Rumble. Rumble. The space around him began to rumble, responding to his intent. He could sense the void realm, sealed off and isolated, but not for long. With a deep breath, he pulled on the invisible threads that bound the void realm, desiring to break off the seal once and for all. Cracks began to form around him, faint at first, but quickly spreading like spider webs through the air. The clouds beneath his feet trembled, and the sky above flickered with strange chaotic patterns. "He is tapping into the void realm," Athena remarked with a solemn tone. "If he were to break the seal and establish a connection, he would have an infinite supply of celestial energy." "Good, it's about time someone put those bastards in their place," Aeolus uttered coldly, spectating the ongoing conflict from the safety of his domain. Seems like getting killed by him wasn't enough for you to hate him, Artemis chuckled. Hate him? Aeolus sneered, my hatred is exclusive to the three rulers after treating us like slaves. How about you? You feel the same? Athena added as she glanced in the direction of a beautiful goddess, Demeter. 100,000 years was more than enough for Unigens to not just recover their souls, but for their entire cores to be recreated by the universe's heart. Although Felix had sacrificed Demeter's core for a wish, the universe's heart still came through and created a new one. Hate. Demeter shook her head calmly, it was never personal between us, I know it, he knows it. I have no loyalty to either side. Before her peers could respond, the words were crushed in their throats by three powerful waves of spiritual pressure descending upon Felix and Asna. They were so strong, that the Unigens felt it within their own domains, making them incapable of imagining what the target would feel like. Well, it felt like the weight of millions of galaxies pressing down on Felix's shoulders, forcing him to stagger a bit. Yet, Felix didn't bother to even lift his head, he just continued working on breaking apart the seal. While he ignored them, Asna had no intentions of doing the same. She stepped in front of him, her form glowing with a radiant light that cut through the oppressive spiritual waves. Nov. L. B //JNN. With a stern visage, she extended her palm forward and released her own spiritual pressure, colliding against the three rulers' spiritual pressures at once. Boom! When most would assume that three spiritual pressures would overwhelm one, the exact opposite occurred. The collision created a thunderous shockwave, tearing the clouds around them apart, and fracturing the sky above. Asna merely stood in front of her man, unmoving akin to a rock. The callous look on her face made it clear to everyone that she wasn't going to allow any harm to befall her beloved. Whoa, mother is so strong! Nimmo murmured, his eyes sparkling in fascination. Strong? You have yet to see anything. Eris merely smiled, her eyes never leaving Asna's face. Meanwhile, the three rulers' incarnations seemed quite surprised that Asna's spiritual pressure didn't manage to completely evaporate theirs. It seems like our assumption was wrong. Amonare smiled coldly, her awakening must have empowered her somehow, but not enough to give her a similar authority to the universe. Felix had been using his spiritual pressure to keep them hidden, making it impossible for the three rulers to see anything related to Asna's awakening. That's why they sent out incarnations and used their spiritual pressure first, desiring to test out the waters before committing to the battle. This changes everything. Medusa's expression also turned sinister, her spiritual pressure is merely slightly better than ours, but not strong enough to overwhelm us. The first ruler and Amonare shared a knowing glance, understanding what Medusa was implying. Still, the first ruler remained calm as he said, the plan stays the same. The moment he finished, Amonare and Medusa disappeared from the dimensional pocket and reappeared on top of their incarnation's shoulders. They gazed at Felix and Asna with looks void of any emotion. Will you be fine against them both? Felix asked calmly while his eyes never left the wall of logic. Asna turned her head and showed a faint cruel smile before uttering, you should worry about them. Then, she walked forward, her steps were so graceful they merely left soft ripples on the floor of clouds. As she was walking forward, two blades manifested on her hands, one was crafted with crimson energy while the other with grey energy. They were simple and had no details, resembling two swords created out of pure energy. Yet, everyone felt shivers course down their spine after noticing their intense auras, making them understand that a single slice by them was enough to cut through anything. The quick-witted ones had already figured out the blade's source. Destruction and creation blades. Eris murmured, will they be enough?